For the upcoming right-hander, brake 30 meters later and ease off the pressure.
Are you spending a lot of time looking for setups and struggling for faster lap times? Are you tired of searching online for answers? Would you like to get setups, analysis and tutorials from some of the best sim racers in the world like Ralph Alla, Mitchell de Jong, Martin Krunker, Josh Rogers and many more? If so, virtualracingschool.com is the answer you've been looking for. VRS data packs provide hot laps from our professional coaches for you to analyse and replicate. They provide tutorials that walk you through the fastest laps and what the pros did to achieve the best times. And they provide the setups you need to ensure your car is competitive in both oval and road racing. If you're ready to get faster and reach more podiums sooner than later, just go to virtualracingschool.com and sign up for a free account today.
Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to another round of rapid fire racing action in the one and only Evolution Sim Racing GT3 Championship Season 8 as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC known as iRacing and in collaboration with Trophy AI. Round 8 has come around with 10 rounds on the calendar. We are nearing the conclusion of what has been an absolutely brilliant season of racing. But as we near the conclusion, we must start to focus on our sprint race rounds. But not before we have one final roll of the dice on a 60-minute feature race round. And here it is today in the US state of Florida for the Sebring International Raceway. A circuit that is synonymous with endurance racing and arguably the toughest circuit on machinery and driver around the world. It is seen as a precursor, particularly the 12 hours of Sebring, to the 24 hours of Le Mans each and every year. Its combination of road surfaces due to its original nature as an Army Air Force base all the way back in the 1940s means that this is a circuit that is absolutely rough on a car suspension. Indeed, the 3.74 mile circuit uses the good part with some of the old concrete runway slips and what is taxiways of the runways of previous years, and those combined with more modern tarmac means that this is a circuit which will be smooth in parts and rough in others, and as our drivers make their way over the concrete seams, they'll feel the suspension shocks bounce up and down, and well, they're going to need to be on the bounce if they want to do well here. Because as well as road surface changes, it is a circuit consisting of 17 corners, a whole medley of corners from the opening corner at Gender BN, the long sweeping left-hander, all the way through to the tight and nippy section over the back section of the circuit from Collier through to Tower. Is a circuit where overtaking opportunities are plentiful, and let's not forget about the extended straights as well, such as the run out of turn number 5 down towards the hairpin at 7, and also the run down the final stretch of Allman in towards Sunset Bend. But will it be a charge into the sunset for some of our drivers today? All of a sudden find themselves getting lost on the runways of Sebring? Well, we're here to find out as we welcome you to this live broadcast from circuit side, and you're tuning into all the racing action from Split B, which covers the Premier and Evo classes. I'm aware of my manners as I welcome you to this broadcast. We'll hear this broadcast available only on the Evolution Sim Racing YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com and search for Evolution Sim Racing alternative ESR, and you'll be able to tune in there and join the likes of Laura Jane, Daniel Rubino and Billy Wright, who we say hello to in the YouTube chat. And if you are there right now, don't be shy, feel free to say hi, for the simple reason we don't bite here at Evolution Sim Racing. The only biting we do is our drivers biting on their carbon ceramic brake discs as they get ready to go red hot racing. But as we welcome you to this broadcast as well, in the commentary booth you have myself, Paul at TX141 Walsh, also known as Britney Spit, bringing you all the racing action as it unfolds. And in terms of unfolding action today, in approximately 10 minutes time, we'll be making our way into our qualifying session, and that's 10 minutes time in terms of British Summer Time, that's BST, or what is it, Universal Coordinate Time +1, UTC +1, so 8:15 this evening. And after our 15-minute qualifying session, we're making our way to the grid for what will be our final feature race of the season, and that's 60-minute showdown. But there's plenty of rounds to go. But instead of just gossiping about what rounds are remaining, how about we show you what rounds are remaining, and let's bring them up on screen. And as we can see then, we are heading deeper and deeper into the calendar. We're firmly in the grips of the final quarter now. It's round number 8 today at the Sebring International Raceway for the 22nd of May. Prior to this, we were in France at the Le Mans circuit in what was a very wet and challenging 2 sprint races there. 2 30-minute races for round number 7, and it really was mixed fortunes for so many a driver in both the Premier and the Evo classes. Indeed, it was a complete shake-up, and we'll talk more about how the standings have been shaken up across both classes in due course. But after today, in round number 9, 9 will make way to Italy for a double-header to see out the season campaign with 2 combination sprint race rounds. The first of which, round number 9, will see our drivers make their way to the Autodromo Enzo e Dino Ferrari, also known as Imola, for the Grand Prix circuit on the 29th of May, and then we'll make our way back in time, almost in a way, to the old-school races circuit, albeit in its modern confectionery layout, and it'll be the Monza Grand Prix circuit that plays host for round 10 of 10 on the 5th of June, as we bring the curtain down a phenomenal season of racing. Indeed, the results here today could really influence what's going to take place over our 4 final races, or as our final 2 racing rounds. But then, coming on to today then, if we're worried about how there could be permutations from today, why don't we take those permutations into context and take a look at the standings? Because starting off with our top 12 drivers in the Premier class, and this is after what is 7 rounds of racing, we can see one thing that has remained certain. Ricard Luiz Pereira is still leading for Vulcan Motorsport Silver. His lead of 493 points to 433 of Mathew Croft. And right now, can anybody stop the Acura driver from gradually pulling away at the front of the field, or at least maintaining his advantage? Because last time out at Le Mans, his consistency was key to enable him to hold on to that lead. We're 7th in race number 1 and a 6th place in race number 2. Meanwhile, all his rivals seem to be stumbling over each other as they try to chase down his championship lead. Mathew Croft has returned to 2nd place, albeit a 2nd place which should have been a 1st in his own words, but he lost out right at the end of the opening race at Le Mans, and in race number 2, damage held him back from being able to charge through to the podium and had to settle for 5th. Mathew Croft missed out some key opportunities, and that's why he's 60 points behind there for ZAXIS Sim Sports. Christoph Starswell as well in 3rd. He was 2nd going into Le Mans. He's dropped back to 3rd, but he's only 11 points behind, and Star Wars Racing were very different, with race number 1 being a 5th place finish and a very happy one, but race number 2, difficulties transpired, and with that a 13th place finish and not the way he wanted it to go whatsoever. In 4th, we have Nick Stubb, and whilst he may be 79 points off of the top 3, the Vulcan Fastest by Glass Tech Racing driver is gradually moving closer to the top 3 little by little, but he does have Peter Duke hot on his heels as well for DDK Racing Team P, and these two in their own right fighting over 4th place. But it'd be rude of us not to consider John Ludbrook in that battle for Carme GP2 Porsche, who are having difficult performances at Le Mans circuit. He'll be looking to be firing all cylinders today, all 6 cylinders of his Porsche 992 GT3, in order to get himself back into that top 5. And then looking in 7th, well, the man who had it all go wrong for him last time out at Le Mans again, and he really has been the story of his season, Jan Osberg there for Nijvels at Glass Tech Racing. Nothing went quite right in France, and he'll just be hoping that luck is back on his side once again after a 6th place finish all the way back in race number 7 of the season. Well, that's been the last time we've seen him in the top 10, and we're hoping to see him back in the top 10 today. James Bostock in 8th place there, 2 races at Le Mans, which really didn't work out for him whatsoever, and therefore he finds himself falling to 8th place, only a further 5 points behind, and there's a further 21 to Jim Fox there for Zuma GP2 Porsche, and so many of these big names in the Premier class all struggling in France, and that's how tricky the conditions were. Scott Kostrich, Carme GP2 Porsche driver, he sits in 10th at 191 points. He's only 12 points ahead of the Ford and Mustang of DXT Motorsports' James Howarth, and for Howarth it was all about survival in the wet with the Ford not liking the wet conditions, but he was still able to pull home 2 9th place finishes and some good points on the board, with Menno Blum completing the Premier standings top 12 there for Sim Racing Team Lowlands on 169 points, and will not on the grid last time out in France, but he's back on the grid today. So that's the Premier class then, and it really is the story of can anybody stop Ricard Luiz Pereira just gradually hold on to that lead and pulling off into the distance. And one interesting statistic, by the way, regarding Ricard Luiz Pereira, you may notice his victories there. We double checked the mathematics. He has won every single feature race this season. So each 60-minute race, he's won it in the Premier class. He has yet to win a sprint race. He really has been the formidable driver of the feature races. And can he make it an unbroken chain of feature race wins come the end of today? If so, I believe that might be a first in Evolution Sim Racing history. But I'm sure many of you with the history books out there will be able to tell me if I'm right or wrong. But whether we're right or wrong there, let's get one thing right. And in the Evo class, at the very top end, it's Wesley Van Rens who leads on 469 points, but he is only 11 points ahead of Grant Miller, and the pendulum swings back and forth between these two. It's absolutely tight, it's absolutely close, and between these two right now, there's nothing in it. Because for the Racing League Hub driver in the Ferrari 296, Le Mans was all about variable results. A disastrous race number 1, a 10th place finish, he didn't want that, but a brilliant drive all the way through the field to finish 3rd in race number 2. Grant Miller, meanwhile, in the Ford Mustang, it was all about consistency, and a 7th and 8th there rewarded him with points, but Wesley Van Rens just getting slightly more points then, able to hold his advantage over the Phoenix Racing driver. Andre Montaigne for ZX's Sim Sports. He sits in third on 392 points. He's trying as much as he can to get close to the top two. But the problem is, for every step he takes forward, he takes one to the slide and one backwards. You could say stepping diagonally. And in closing distance is Roll Turf Courier, where a brilliant second place finish in the second race of the day at Le Mans. The MJK Sim Racing B driver is closing up to the ZX's Sim Sports driver, and only 13 points between them. Rob Gregg sits in fifth. Good results at Le Mans, but that full place finish in the second race of the day. The Moonshiners Racing Club driver just holding off the charge of Daniel Paul, who had his best performances of the season at Le Mans, the flatline racing driver really coming through. And I think in other circumstances or other what-if scenarios, he could have even finished on the podium in the second race of the day, but it wasn't to be. But one thing is certain, he's moved ahead of Steve Rubino, the Hobo Racing driver there with a non-finishing race number one, cost him dear and has dropped him down to seventh. Gareth Newton sits in eighth for Carme GP2 Porsche and really had the lion's share of the points in the Evo class last time out. Unfortunate not to try and make it 2 wins out of 2, but still picking up victory in the second race of the day and a second in race number one. He'll be absolutely ecstatic with that, even coming into today. I don't think the grin's come off his face yet. With Sean Clark falling tonight for DXT Motorsports, and then we do see Owen Stewart there in 10th for DXT Motorsports, and the McLaren 720S Evo driver today going onto the grid. I do believe he's running a new set of pedals in that McLaren, and therefore he's got to get acquainted with them, and therefore this could be a very challenging round, and it's going to be one of familiarisation. Still, one thing we are familiar with is that Jan Nagy for Nifels at Class Tech Racing, not on the grid tonight due to personal circumstances, but he had his best result of the season in race one number at Le Mans, taking victory at the front of the field in the Evo class. A 10th place finish, however, in the second race due to a huge instant through the second of the moles and chicanes, putting back down to earth. For a brief moment at least, however, the Swede was smiling, and no doubt about it, as he sits ahead of Mark Parkhurst by 5 points there, and while the battle continues to rage on, with Parkhurst finished on the podium in race number one, but non-finish in the second race at Le Mans. Indeed, such a brutal round on so many drivers there across both classes. But going on to the Teams Championship, well, Le Mans didn't just serve to mix up the championship standings for our drivers, but also for our teams, and as we can see there, still leading the way is RDSA Esports on 957 points, but only now by a very slender margin over ZX's Sim Sports, as the gap between the two teams tightens, and both teams are right there in the places they came out of the previous round. Racing League Hub, they hold on to third on 906 points, but the field behind it is closing on them, with Vulcan Motorsports Gold there having a strong round last week, and they've moved their way back into fourth, and they're very close to what is third place now. Behind them, Phoenix Racing, and happy 16th birthday to Hayden Phoenix Miller, who is racing in Split A this evening, but Grant Miller and Robin Milton on the grid in Split B. And watch out for them as well as they battle for fifth for Carme GP2 Porsche. And you can see the Vulcan Fasters by Glass Tech Racing are not too far behind the fight for fifth. From them, it's a 50-point gap to Vulcan Motorsport Silver as they continue to take big steps forward in their chase for a top 5 finish, albeit still with GP2 Porsche are falling away from that top 5 hunt and instead are under pressure now for ninth from Moonshiners Racing Club. And outside the top 10 from the 650 points of Moonshiners Racing Club or Team MRC is Simcast Racing UK on 640 points, but they've got Virtual Racing Team only a further 23 points behind in 12th, not shown on screen. Indeed, the fight to be at the bottom end of the top 10 is just as close as it is to be right at the top of the field. But coming from our standings and our update after 7 rounds of racing, let's go on to our circuit for today. And it's the Sebring International Circuit, and we are racing the full layout, or what is known as the International Layout. Located near the city of Sebring in the Highlands County of Florida of the US of A, where this circuit spanning 3.74 miles or 6.01 kilometers, depending on your preference of units, is a circuit that has withstood the test of time in terms of its popularity. It's gone through multiple layout changes over the course of its history, particularly as the circuit has evolved away from the older runways to become more of a dedicated road racing circuit, albeit still using some of the runways of old, as we mentioned earlier, but for the most part, it does mean about 80% of the circuit is a dedicated road racing course at this point. But as the drivers roar the way around this circuit, well, they'll need to deal with the fact they've got a whole variety of corners with which they can do battle. They've got a very wide open start-finish straight, where they'll charge the way down to Genderbean corner, and as they roar the way in towards turn number 1, it'll be for the long left-hander. They then head for the Kinker 2 and onto the brakes for turns 3, 4 and 5. Through the left-right-left combination, it's like a chicane, and as they exit out, it'll be the big sweeper, a big bend of turn number 6, which will see them make the way towards the hairpin at 7, a big battling braking zone there before they head all the way for the Fangio complex of 8 to 9 into the braking zone for Cunningham at turn 10. Through Collier, the kink of 11, and then it's going to be into turns 12 and 13 for Tower, which will see our drivers make the way onto the backstretch. Bishop, we could expect some brilliant battling there, albeit into Le Mans complex to turns 15 and 16, where drivers in the older era used to get lost through there, but we'll tell you a little bit more about that later on in the broadcast if we get a chance to. Onto the Allman Straight they'll go, and then it's Sunset Bend, the tricky corner where you need to brake as late as possible to get it absolutely right to complete the lap and do it all over again. But that's the circuit we're racing at, and we're giving you a recap of how things stand. So as we head back to circuit side, there's only one thing to do, of course, ladies and gentlemen, and that is get ready to go racing here, as we've only got a minute left on the clock before we do head into our qualifying session. And we're out there right now in terms of the fastest driver. It's Peter Duke who's the fastest in the Acura NSX Evo 22, and he is joined practically only separated by a tenth of that by Ricard Luiz Pereira. It does seem as though our two Acura drivers right back and form. Robin Milton in 5th place at the moment, the Phoenix Motorsports driver. And as we do look to those classifications, you can see in the Evo class, 9th fastest in practice is Andre Montine, the ZX Sim Sports driver. Another Acura driver. Well, it does look as though the Acura are looking strong here, but don't count out the Ford Mustangs either. James Howarth in a Premier, 3rd place in the terms of the fastest times overall in the Premier class. And in the Evo class, we do have the Ford Mustangs of Steve Rubino and Grant Miller not too far behind. So it's going to look tight there. And the Fords and the Acuras are definitely going to be the two main battlers here. But don't rule out any manufacturer, don't rule out any driver for a simple reason. Many have sprung surprises, including this man, Vincent Loader, who took back-to-back victories in the sprint race at Le Mans last time out in the Porsche 992. The Porsche was a weapon around the French circuit, and Loader was an absolute master in powering it on through to victory. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to head to qualifying for 15 minutes, 4 flying laps from each of our drivers. Who's going to be on pole? Let's find out. So here we go then. 15 minutes. No other drivers other than the drivers themselves out of the circuit in terms of an isolated qualifying session, and it means it is going to be go, go, go all the way through as they all begin to pile the way out of the pit lane in their respective closed qualifying sessions. Now, as they make the way out, well, we have seen it does look as though it's going to be a game of what is wits and speed between the Acuras and the Ford Mustangs. At least that's what the practice times would tell us. But of course, practice we can never read too much into, for the fact that practice times, they could be on different sets of fuel, they could be where drivers are taking it easy, potential sandbagging, etc., etc. There are so many permutations. We're not going to go through them, otherwise we'll be here all night. We won't be talking about the racing, but what can we talk about in qualifying? Well, how important is qualifying firstly? Over a 60-minute race distance at the Sebring circuit is relatively important. This is a circuit where you can make overtakes. You can battle into most corners around Sebring, but battling, much like at any other circuit, does cost you time, and particularly if you decide to battle into corners such as Sunset Bend, the final corner, also going to turn 7 hairpin, which we've just seen Howarth make his way out of and through Fangio, all turning into Tower Corner at turns 12 and 13. All of that will cost you a lot of time and allow your rivals to gradually pull away. And with your rivals pulling away, that changes your strategic options. You can do quite a bit of fuel saving here. You do have 2 long straights, the start-finish straight and also the Ullman straight. You also arguably have a third in the form of Big Bend at turn number 5 through to turn number 7. So therefore, if you're able to stay in the toe of one of your rivals, you will be able to sip the fuel off the back of them. And with the slipstream, that is going to give you an opportunity to essentially have a faster pit stop. Tyre degradation is always going to be important over the race distance. However, we'll talk more about the tyre degradation in the race itself. So it does mean there is going to be a bit of an emphasis on qualifying here, because if you can qualify quite far up the order, you're going to feel more comfortable going into the race, but it's not impossible to come roaring through the field. How to do well in qualifying? Well, you've got to be calm, cool and collected. You've really got to get the car dialed in. You've got to feel comfortable with the car. There are a lot of different styles of corners here, from hairpins through to medium to high speed sweepers, and also some rapid fire direction changes. We see one of them there coming out turn 7 hairpin for Ross Norsworthy for the Simcast Racing UK team. We do say hello to Stephen Wilkinson cheering them on. And we also say hello there to Marius Hibma, or Hibma I should say, let's get his surname correctly. Also to Anna Rubino, who's cheering on Steve Rubino. And in fact, where is Steve Rubino out on circuit at the moment? Is he out there? Yes, he is. He makes his way into the final corner, into Sunset Bend in the Hobo Racing Machine. It is sunset currently in the state of Florida, at least on our simulator, and it does mean we are going to be seeing this race conclude most likely at night time, and that is also going to be a big element here, because of course in what is relative daylight circumstances in qualifying, you've got all your brake markers available to you. You've got the ability to see markers you may not see in darker conditions, and therefore all drivers will need to have done their research as to what their brake markers will be in the dark, because much like the Sebring 12 hours that happens each and every year, they will be finishing in darkness, is where to understand it. And with that darkness, well, the circuit evolves in its own nature, and if you're not ready for it, it can catch you out with regards to your braking and turning points and everything in between. But as we also say hello there to Asher Cooper, who's cheering on, I believe, Will Christopher, so I'm going to say that's Christopher Stalsmore most likely, and we also say hello there to Katie Kitty Eames, who is cheering on the Verano Academy drivers, and that is going to be the combination of Christian Maltrek, and we're not Christian Maltrek there, in fact it's going to be, what is, I get my surnames mixed up there, Christian Malaskov there. I'm thinking of a different Christian that I've recently seen at Go Racing, and also to Craig Tillison, to name 2 of them out there. Unfortunately, we don't have Adil Chowdhury on the grid due to the fact he's still nursing what is an injury, and while we do wish him all the best in his recovery, we'll come into our drivers who are making their way way out there at the moment. Well, we do need to talk about one of our Verano Motorsport drivers, and that is Christian Malaskov, because many of you may remember this was the man who tried to hold on to victory last time out in the second race of the day at Le Mans. He didn't quite do so, but what he did do was bring home his maiden podium in the Premier class of the season, and he was absolutely ecstatic about that. And indeed, down in the Verano Academy garage, as I made the way down there after the racing, I could tell you they were absolutely screaming with joy for the 107 driver. In fact, he's worked incredibly hard this season. He's been battling to fight inside the top 10s all season long in the Premier class, and he absolutely delivered it in the reverse grid race. Now, of course, he did start towards the front of the field, so some may say we definitely inherited a few places, but the point being, in those tricky conditions, when you're battling that hard and you've got people piling through the field in the Premier class, holding on to third place was testament to his ability, and the 107 driver absolutely delivering it as he comes on around there. And we do see all the drivers getting themselves set, but you're right, cheering on Mathew Croft. Well, the first times come on in, and it's James Howarth who sets the bar at 1 minute 57.797. We're to expect that. He was saying all week in the build-up to going racing they've been able to get sub 2 minutes here at Sebring, which a lot of drivers were raising their eyebrows at, but immediately Peter Duke responds there on a 59.618, and we see more times coming in. Road Turf Gear setting the initial benchmark time in the Evo class, third place currently of a 2 minute 0.513. I suspect we're going to see plenty more times coming in. I think we're going to see some drivers get towards the low 59s before all is said and done in this qualifying session, and the target will be a low 59 for overall pole position as we are to understand it. But other drivers that come on through and around the circuit, well, we do have the return of a driver to the grid today. I'm very happy to say that he's not been on the grid for some time due to broken pedals, but he's back now, and here he is. It's Mark De Vries who's back in the Premier class in the Ferrari 296 GT3, and the STL driver making his way on through in the sim racing team at Lowlands machine in full. And we're very happy to see the 121 driver back on the grid after what has been missing the best part, if I remember correctly, of 5 rounds of racing, if not 6 rounds at this point. And well, he has been missed, no doubt, and as he makes his way on through here, well, no matter how he does today, the fact he's back on the grid, that's going to put a smile on the faces of everyone up and down the order, even us here in the commentary booth. But as he heads on around here, we're currently down in 16th place overall, or what is 10th in at the Premier class. We'll be hoping for a bit more time here as he heads on around. We do have the best part of 40 drivers in attendance today, so we've still got an absolutely packed grid out there. And we'll from one Ferrari who's making his way up the order to one at the top of the order right now. Christopher Stalsmore, their fastest driver, Sim Racing Team UK. And as he comes in towards the right hand of the Simcast Racing Team, I should say, well, we're on his way for turn number 7 in towards 8. The Ferrari driver in the 110 right now, definitely looking to be on fine form. And we have seen some very good qualifying performances from Christopher Stalsmore this season at Kota. There was an absolutely fine performance there and absolutely delivered at the Circuit of the Americas, and right now he's looking to back that up again. But where is Mathew Croft in all of this? Well, Mathew Croft right now, have we got a time for Mathew Croft? I do not believe we have at the moment. I think we're still waiting on a time from him. Here he is, and we're going to jump on board for a flying lap here with Crofty, as he's known to friends, as he roars his way down the start-finish straight. He gets his first lap on the board, but now he goes for another lap. That puts him 6th on a 2 minute 0.207. But in towards the opening corner he goes, keeping it nice and tight. It's all there in 4th gear, hooking the car around, and now as he makes one out here, using all the width of the circuit through the Kinker 2 and hard on the brakes at the 100-meter yard cones as he roars his way through the left in towards the right hander of turn 4. Goes a little bit tight to the inside on the entry to turn 5 there, but he carries the speed around the Porsche, can get away with that given it is rear engine rear wheel drive. It's got more natural rotation as he comes through Big Bend corner. He's absolutely flying through these corners right now as he heads up towards turn number 7. Now, as he gets ready for the hairpin, he'll look to his left-hand side for the brake marker cones, and he'll brake between the 3 and the 2. Onto the brakes he goes, down to first gear, braking for about 130 metres away from the corner, and now going through the kinks and in towards the Fangio complex. It's the right-hander followed by the left-hander in reference to 1 mil Fangio as he roars his way through the left-hander. Now he gets ready to break his way into Cunningham corner at turn number 10. Braking at the 150-metre mark there, very tight corner, deceptively tight. You need to attack it early, not late, as he comes out through the left-hander of Collier. Turn 11 complete, and now into the Kinker 12, setting up his braking zone for turn 13. Points the car to the outside there, drops all the way down to second gear, chucks the car in, avoids the apex curves, you'll notice, given how high they are. They'll send the car wide with understeer, and now on to the final stretch. Heading towards Bishop Corner, and this is all about being flat out and just gently nursing the car through the left-hander of 14. Bring over to the left-hand side, onto the brakes for 15 he goes, down to third gear, wait for it, and now feed the power in, let the car go through the left-hander, sweep it out wide, onto the brakes, down to second gear. Nice early apex there, coming through Le Mans corner, and out he goes using all the exit curve. That is absolutely beautiful for Mathew Croft as he heads down the Allman Straight. all the way up through the gearbox now, up into 6th gear, and as he gets ready for the final corner, well, this is going to be a very late braking zone for Sunset Bend. He'll look for his turning point, he'll be at the 50-metre cone, and now braking there effectively at what is about 10 metres from the approach to the apex. Through the right under he goes, absolutely dead on the dot there, precision out the corner, and it's an absolutely lovely lap from Mathew Croft, but what's it going to be as he heads the line? He thinks he's done a good one because he straight-lined it out of there, and it's enough to put him into the 59 to the 59.921, and it puts him 6th, but Steve Rubino, meanwhile, whilst we've seen Mathew Croft do an absolutely fantastic lap, Steve Rubino is 5th currently as what is your Evo leader in this qualifying session, provisional pole sitter for Evo, and Rubino drops down to 6th as we see an improvement from Ricard Luiz Pereira, but the point being that Rubino right now in a bit of a world of his own in this qualifying session for the Evo drivers, and to put you in the perspective of class positions, well, if we do separate them by class, Rubino right now 7 tenths faster, yes, 7 tenths, I'm not making it up, 7 tenths faster than Roald at Turfcure, as we see there 2 tenths that is slashed by Andre Montine, who goes into 2nd in Evo, but Montine will be starting 16th from the grid provisionally currently, compared to Rubino's 6th place. That is 10 place on the grid that he's been able to put between them, and they're running out of laps here as they head on around and roaring the way on through at the moment. Well, for all the drivers, still trying to deliver the laps. They haven't got many laps left. Remember, they have their out lap plus 4 flying laps. Most of our drivers are now onto their full flying lap. There are some who decide to delay going onto their laps and therefore have a bit more time available to them and trying to use the majority of the qualifying session. And looking a bit further down the order, one driver who's yet to get a time on the board is Robin Milton, yet to put a lap in. He is our 39th driver in the running order, the only one who's yet to get a lap in the Acura NSX Evo 22, as he comes on through there for Phoenix Racing. Well, ever since joining midway through the season, he's definitely put down a very good impression with regards to his laps, and roaring his way on through here down the Allman Straight. What's he going to be able to do this time around is the big question, and the answer is we'll have to wait and see when he comes on around. But if he can do so here, if he can deliver a good lap, it could be one that puts him all the way at the order. The time to beat at the very top is a 59.515. It is a personal best for Milton in the most part here as he comes out the final quarter, but coming towards the line, he brings it over. He's not happy with the lap so far. He reckons he can do better. Comes across the line then, and it's going to put him into 7th place overall, in 8th place overall, 7th in Premier Class, and that is behind Mathew Croft, and Croft is down on was the full throw of the grid as well with Milton. So both drivers there not having the best of qualifying sessions compared to where they'd like to be, but it's so well matched this qualifying field as we look to the overall standings once again. There shows you all 39 drivers how they'll line up on the grid together, and as they do, well, Christopher Starsmore, he currently is the fastest man on that 59.515, a phenomenal lap, only 11 thousandths faster than Peter Duke, but Duke is in the pit lane. He's not been able to improve further. However, we start in 3rd at the best provisionally in the Ford Mustang, only a further 3.5 hundredths behind the time set by Duke. It is so close right now in this qualifying session. Not many drivers have got laps left. Can we expect anybody to spring some late surprises? Pallett's just crossed the line. He's not improved from what would be currently a starting position of 29th, as we have had an improvement from Rice, that being the driver of oh, goodness me, Stuart Rice there, as the Acura driver has moved his way into 24th, or what is 19th in the Premier Class. The lowest placed Premier driver at the moment is Ross Norsworthy, who would be 32nd this grid. Christian Malaskov has moved up to 18th place, but we're going to see Starsmore make his way through the last couple of corners. I think this is going to be a lap where he's not going to improve. Maybe he'll just peel into the pits. He does so, keeps a very tight line on exit there and into the pit lane, practicing his pit entry instead. Ricard Luiz Pereira, the man to beat in Premier in the Championship. He is leading coming into this night, and he has a flawless record of victories in the feature races this season. Well, in order to maintain that record, the first thing he'll want to do is make sure he starts on the front row of the grid if he can, as he heads on around. In terms of his sectors so far, nothing is screaming out special here. He has not improved so far over this lap, minus his run through turn 1 was faster than his previous best, but other than that, everything else is either matching or worse than before. So Luiz Pereira is going to have to pull off some magic in the final couple of quarters here if he wants to try and move his way further up the order, albeit it's going to be a challenge if he's able to pull it off, but making his way on around. Well, we have had confirmation in the Evo class. All of our Evo drivers, minus Owen Seward and Charlie Stoffart and Sean Clark and James Fraser, are into the pit lane, so it is looking as though that 6th place overall, or 1st place in Evo for Steve Rubino. It's still provisional, but it may stand quite confidently unless we get any surprises. Well, the one driver we'd expect being a surprise would be Charlie Stoffart, who's normally left it late in qualifying sessions to pull off magical laps. So let's not rule out the McLaren 720S Evo driver, but staying in the focus here to Luiz Pereira as he comes on through the final quarter. Well, what can the Vulcan and Motorsports silver driver do as he comes on out? We improved at the very start of the lap, but otherwise this lap has not been forgiving for him. And as he heads to the line, where he's immediately thrown in the towel there, he's not happy with it. He brings the car to a gradual hold, and he'll start full place at best there. And that is a little bit of frustration, I think, in the fact he's not been able to get himself on that front row. So he'll find himself battling in the pack quite early on, albeit on the second row. So if he can get a good start, he may be able to get into the front paces very early on. But the problem will be that that's one thing in theory, it's another thing in practice, as we see Dean Sheesby run all the way out towards the wall there on the exit. He's currently in 11th place overall. What can he do this time as he crosses the line? And the answer is he can't do any better. He will stay 11th there with 2 minutes left on the clock. He has one more lap available to him. So right now he's going to throw everything at this. I don't think he's going to get around to deliver that final lap as much as he'll try, as much as he'll huff and puff. I mean, Seward's not improved from 25th, or 6th place in the Evo class. That's where he's going to stay. And Charlie Stoffard has parked up there on the Rands Bishop quarter, so therefore no improvement from the number 6 McLaren driver, and that's as far as he's going to go in this qualifying session. James Fraser is still out there on his final lap. Let's see him head towards the line, and well, I think he's invalidated lap. He's going straight on there into the barrier at the Sunset Bend, so Fraser will be starting 39th, last but not least of the field, as we look at those class positions then, and there you can see in terms of how the classes line up, and in the Evo class, it is almost 6 tenths between Steve Rubino and Andre Montine for that pole position in Evo, and that accounts to the best part of 11 places on this grid, as we do see Owen Seward crawling around here right now on the cool-down lap. Dean Sheesby, a hybrid of the two drivers there. Dean Sheesby making his way on around with a minute left on the clock, but I don't think he's going to get there. I think he's going to be about 6 seconds late to the finish line in order to deliver his final flying lap. I think he's left it a little bit too late, but we'll still get to see a wonderful lap as he keeps his way on around. But it does essentially confirm we are locking in that Christopher Starsmore is your pole sitter over in the Premier class, and he'll be joined on the front row of the grid by Peter Duke. James Howarth is going to be starting third. Championship leader Ricard Luiz Pereira will be starting fourth place on the overall grid in the Premier class, and then behind them will be the combination of Nick Stubb and Mathew Croft. Croft left it quite late to put himself on the third row of the grid in the fellow company of another Porsche driver, only 17 thousandths between them, so it's an absolutely razor sharp top 6 with regards to our Premier and overall grid, and I think that's only going to make things even more tense, because for Luiz Pereira, he knows he needs to get a good start, because otherwise Croft will be breathing down his neck, and Christopher Starsmore, the third place man in the championship, if he can convert that pole position to victory, this could be a huge points injection, enabling him to gain the ground. As qualifying is complete, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to head to the grid for our one and only race. So as the drivers make their way onto the grid, this is how they'll line up for our race today. Here at the Sebring International Raceway for Split B and round number 8 of the Trophy AI-powered Evolution Sim Racing GT3 Championship, we will see none other than Christopher Starsmore take pole position for Simcast Racing UK, a brilliant pole position there overall and in the Premier class, and he is joined on that front row of the grid by Peter Duke for DDK Racing Team, who after a frustrating last couple of rounds where things have not quite clicked together, well, the real-life racer turned sim racer, and tell you one thing, the 177 driver's done an absolutely brilliant job on getting himself right back towards the front. James Howarth will be starting third for DXT Motorsports, his best qualifying performance in a long time, if not the entirety of the season, and the Ford Mustang driver will be knowing that he can do battle with only half a tenth separating the top 3 in this qualifying session. It's been the tightest qualifying session yet so far this season, and that's before you consider it's only a further what is 34 thousandths to Ricard Luiz Pereira for Vulcan Motorsport Silver, who starts fourth. From the championship leader, we come to Nick Stubb, the Vulcan Fastest by Glass Tech Racing driver, the Dutchman, having another great qualifying session, and he'll be eagerly trying to chase down the podium. But look who starts in 6th place for Hobo Racing. It is your Evo pole sitter with a lightning fast lap than the Ford Mustang GT3, Steve Rubino, his best qualifying points of the season, indeed the best Evo qualifying points we have seen this season, and I believe, unless I'm mistaken, arguably one of the best qualifying points we've ever seen from an Evo driver in Split B, and I'm sure the historians will be able to verify that after the racing. Mathew Croft will start today 7th for ZX's Sim Sports. We know he does better in the race conditions compared to qualifying. Qualifying is his weak spot, but starting the 4th row of the grid, he's been edged out from the 3rd row, but I don't think he's going to be complaining because he knows he can go forward from there. Robin Milton will join him for Phoenix Racing, starting 8th. And your top 10 is completed by the combination pair John Ludbrett for Kame GP2 Porsche and Vincent Loader for Sim Racing Team Lowlands. Then 11th, best of the rest, is going to be Dean Sheesby for Moonshiners Racing Club. He'll be in the company of James Bostock for Kame GP2 Porsche, who once again qualifies just outside the top 10, but you can never count him out. Denny Ploger begins his day 13th for MJK Sim Racing, ahead of Robin Aston for Suma GP2 Porsche. And then we do have starting 15th on the grid, Sander Tabbers for Sim Racing Team Lowlands, who's trying to hold on to a top 12 spot in the Premier Championship, but qualifying that far down, he's going to need to find some places and work some points, and LS Racing B's Pete Piver from Brazil will be very eager to try and make an impression to stop him from doing so. Then we've seen 17th of the grid, the second of our Evo drivers. That's how far back you have to go for a second Evo driver, given the performance of Steve Rubino. It's Andrew Montine for ZXF Sim Sports, a second place starting position, and this could be an important one, because behind him will be Christian Maliskov starting 18th for Verano Academy. It's Scott Kostrich for Kame GP2 Porsche, and Grant Miller, the important name, the second of the Ford Mustangs in the Evo class. He starts 20th, and well, we'll know that he needs to try and move forward in order to score some big points, given the fact we have yet to come to Wesley Van Rens, who's much further down the running order. But carrying on for our grid then, now onto row number 11. It's Road Turf Career for MJK Sim Racing with another steady qualifying performance. He's joined in 22nd place by Adam Baker for LS Racing B, and then you have the combination pair of Wesley Van Rens, who starts on this grid today, 5th place in the Evo class, so significantly further back for Racing League Hub. We know he can move forward very quickly in that Ferrari 296, and from the Dutchman, it's the Briton Stuart Rice of Blue Sky Esports. Owen Stewart begins his day 25th for DXT Motorsports, one of his best qualifying performances in the Evo class this season. Head of Verano Academy's Craig Tillotson in the Corvette that's still trying to move forward. But from the Verano Academy driver, it's then Charlie Stoffard for Team KXR and Mark De Vries on his return to the grid, who begins his day 28th for Sim Racing Team Lowlands. Completing the top 30 will be the pairing on row 15 of James Pallett for Racing League Hub and Rob Gray for Moonshiners Racing Club. And as we continue our way down the order, then in 31st place, it'll be Daniel Paul for Flatline Racing ahead of Ross Norsworthy for Simcast Racing UK. Sean Clark starts his day on the 17th row of the grid for DXT Motorsports in the company of Alex Boniface, who begins 34th for DXT Motorsports, his teammate. And then we do have Jan Nagy for Nifels at Glass Tech Racing. We're struggling qualifying. Well, he'll be starting at 35th on the grid ahead of Mark Wesley for LS Racing B. Your final full row of the grid is going to be contested by Eduardo Endino for LS Racing B and Simcast Racing UK's Matthew Hunt, who returns to the grid after coming back from a personal trip. We're very happy to see the number 10 driver back on the grid, given the last time he was on the grid he has some brilliant performances. And then completing that order, 39th on the grid after a difficult qualifying session, Moonshiners Racing Club's James Fraser, 39th of our 39 starters and 16th place in the Evo class. Well, that's how they all line up, ladies and gentlemen, for round number 8 here, Split B at the Sebring International Raceway in the US state of Florida. It is undoubtedly going to be a race to be enjoyed here as they all make the way around, where it's not long before we do go green flag racing. And when we look to the overall timing tally there, all of our 39 drives all together, and we are 2/3 of the way through the formation lap. And as they make the way around, well, it's not long before we do go green flag racing. And for this man, Steve Rubino, as we ride on board for a brief moment, the Hobo Racing driver knows he's got a golden opportunity here to put a win on the board and put a big score in as well, as he chases a top 5 finish in the championship come the end of the season, if not a top 3. But will he be able to put it off from so far at the running order, or will he find his rivals will come on through quickly? For Grant Miller, the other Ford Mustang, he knows he's got his work cut out here with Wesley Van Rens a little bit behind him. For Miller, he's got to move forward as quickly as possible in a new livery for the machine today. But further at the front of the field, it'll be a clear track shortly for this man, Krista Starswell for Simcast Racing UK, and he'll know that he'll be the one to dictate the pace and try to dance off into distance as the sunset falls. Well, up and down the order, they're all itching and ready to go. The pace car has its lights off, and as it makes its way into the final corner, Starswell will begin to back the field up, and as he does so, well, you can count on one thing, ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be fast, it's going to be furious. There's also going to need to be a bit of strategy involved here at Sebring over the 60 minutes, and it will be to Christopher Starswell to take us to the green. And it's go for round number 8 of the championship as Christopher Starswell goes exactly on the lights, and as they roll the way down, he nails the start. Peter Duke and Ricard Luiz Pereira immediately fighting as they make their way into opening quarter. Contact between the two, and Luiz Pereira on the inside. That's very tight as Starswell sweeps round, but you can see they're causing each other to lose time. Rubino takes a long wide line. They're playing it safe as they roar the way in towards turn number 3. It's 3 wide for Baz Howarth under pressure, and Rubino on the inside is Stubb coming on down to Peter Duke goes round. I'm not sure if he's tapped there or not as they make their way through, but 3-4 wide as best they can into turns 3, 4 and 5, and as they do, no driver wanting to back off just yet. It's absolutely brilliant close racing between everybody. Unfortunate for Peter Duke. We'll try and get an update on him when we can, but as our drivers roar the way around, with Duke right now waiting for the field to come through, but Pete Piver making some gains early on as well as they all come down here, and Steve Rubino is up into second, but for how long? As Luiz Pereira looks up the inside, Rubino goes deep, but he manages to get the car stopped in time. That'll back the field up behind him, but Rubino right now has made his way into second place with some brilliant driving from the front of the field, and as he makes way through, the whole field is bottling up behind him. Look at at Starswell. Starswell's already off into a different postcode as they make their way down towards 10-10. Rubino lets the place go to Luiz Pereira, but this is not what Luiz Pereira wanted at all. As they go side by side through 10 into 11, they're making their way through Collier Corner, and it's battling all the way in towards Tower as they come into the double right complex. Rubino leaves the door open, and Howarth looking up the inside as well, but can't find a way through on the brakes. Further back, Scott Kostrich here is under pressure from Charlie Stofford and Christian Malaskov, as Stofford does another lightning dash through the field as he always does at the start of these races. That's a car round. That's an Acura that's gone round, I believe, as we had seen a Malaskov backing off Dean Sheesby one side and Bolt Topkura on the other side of him. And right now the Dutchman's being very brave, as that's Grant Miller seeing Wesley Van Rens go around the outside of him, albeit having to use track limits liberally there, but it's going to be side by side between the two big contenders in the Evo Class Championship. But Wesley Van Rens backs off for a brief moment, lets the place be given back, and then takes it again into Le Mans corner. Well, he plays his cards right, and as they head the way onto the back straight here, well, now it's going to be all-out warfare between these two as they come down towards Sunset. Riding on board between the two of them, of course, is none other than Adam Baker on the inside for Ellis Racing B. As they head into the braking zone here, where it's going to be Baker on the right, it's going to be Miller on the left, and onto the brakes they'll go, and Miller in the end leaves the door wide open here in order to give himself the best possible slingshot run off the corner. But the problem is, Mark De Vries says, well, can I play as well? And as he does so, well, he brings a lap to a close in. Grant Miller has been muscled down the order very quickly. So after one lap of racing, already 3 seconds clear, it's Christopher Starswell. Ricard Luiz Pereira is in second. Then we have James Howarth in third. Nick Stubb in fourth. They're all Premier drives. Evo leader Steve Rabin, after a lightning start, falls back to fifth. Mathew Croft is in sixth. Further back, we've had a bit of a moment here, battling side by side. I think Vincent Loader fighting there with John Ludbrook, as we did skip over Robin Milton and then to Loader in 8th place. Is then Ludbrook in 9th. He backs off there coming out of turn number 5. James Bostock is in 10th, 2 places gained. And best rest in 11th is Sander Tabbers. In second place in the Evo class, it's Andre Montoon. He's gained 2 places overall, but none in class. He started second in class. He's got Charlie Stoffard there right behind him, and Stoffard has absolutely come surging through the field. He's up into third place in Evo already. He gets that McLaren absolutely switched on, and right now he's turned on to go to the task of trying to chase down a victory, or at least what will be a podium, as he comes on out the corner. Then you've got Scott Kostrich, Christian Malaskov, and Dean Sheesby tucked in behind. Sheesby, however, fighting here with Malaskov as they go too wide, coming out of turn at number 7 into Fangio. They go into the braking zone. A flash of lights there from the Porsche. Sheesby right up the inside there and says no you don't, and gets it stopped on the Diamond Moonshine's Racing Club Acura, and Sheesby having to be very aggressive there to put one over Malaskov, but gets it done in the end. Malaskov's not going to let that go too soon. However, I think he's going to play the game, which is I don't need to fight early, I need to be smart on strategy, and Sebring, you do have to be intelligent on the strategy you use. We can see there Stuart Rice falling a long way down the order. In fact, Rice taking a bit of an excursion. The Blue Sky Esports machine has had a couple of off tracks so far. On the open lap we did see coming to a bit of bother, and as it rejoins here, it's going to lose even more places. It's going to be Eduardo Endino making his way through in the Ellis Racing B machine, and Mark Wesley as well trying to come up behind there and make it what would be a trio of Ellis Racing B machines making the way up through, but not quite at this time, as Alex Boniface also watches on there in the sole Audi R8 Evo 2, but great to see him out there for DXT Motorsports. And we have had Peter Duke retire from this race as a result of the overlap incident, and I also believe we do have James Pallett a little bit further back after a bit of an altercation himself. We will get a replay on what happened to Peter Duke shortly as we show you those class positions on screen, ladies and gentlemen, now that things are settling down, albeit I say that they're settling down, and as soon as I do, well, one of our drivers decides to prove otherwise, as we do see Denny Ploger taking a bit of an excursion to the outside of Sunset Bend, avoids the wall. Dean Sheesby comes on through, but here comes Christian Malaskov as well as they're 3 wide. This is the fight over 14th place in Premier, but for them this is all about some key points, and as they come on down, 3 into 1 does not normally go, but they're going to do it anyway, and it is going to be Dean Sheesby who parts the seas like Moses and says, here at Sebring, I'm going to be the one to come on through, but Malaskov says, no you don't, because you put one on me earlier and I'm going to do it to you. Looks up the inside there, but Sheesby's killed over the apex, and Ploger I think was thinking about it, but decided not to in the end, 9 that the Porsches will be braking equally, and in the end it's not going to work out for him. Adam Baker a bit further back, well, he's under some pressure from Mark De Vries, and De Vries getting settled into the race now, trying to go fighting here as they come out of the corner, riding on board the dashboard here of the 121 Ferrari from Sim Racing Team Lowlands, and onto the braking zone they go in towards the hairpin at turn number 7. Can he go for the move around the outside? Well, if he can, this is going to be very brave to do so. You don't normally go around the outside here unless your rivals had an absolute nightmare of a run through Big Ben. But right now, Mark De Vries not able to find the way through, and as we ride on board here, the engine, the 6-cylinder's absolutely roaring high with the addition of the turbo in towards what will be turn number 10. He goes, and as he does, onto the brakes there, gets very close, doesn't quite work out, but De Vries right now gets it very, very fighty here, and I think still experimenting exactly where the biting points are on his new pedals, and it is all about trying to get familiar with them, and he'll be enjoying this race. He's up into 18th place in class, and he's got some more work to do. He started 21st, so it's not been a bad start, but I think he wants a little bit more before all is said and done. and there's a long distance to go over this one. But as they all settle down a little bit more, still more fighting to come, no doubt about it. But as we look further back to Stuart Rice here, really right now finding himself in a world of pain with a number of Evo drives around him. Not to besmirch the Evo drives, but I think Rice wants to be batting with the Premiers, not the Evos. Well, that is going to be Eduardo and Dino backing out into Bishop Corner, recognising that 2 does not go into 1 through the kink there on that tighter line. Not if Rice does not get in the room to do so. I think Stuart Rice right now trying to use his greater experience of racing compared to some of his Evo peers, really to show them exactly how aggressive you can be coming through some of these corners at Sebring as they make the way down the Allman Straight. But as they do right in the toe there, Matthew Hunter, if he was any closer, I think he'd be pushing Matthew Hunter down the straight there. And well, as they come down in towards turn number 17, he'll be on the inside here, and Rice trying to go for the move. Hunter gives the space then, the Simcast Racing UK machine, and that's going to be another place overall for Stuart Rice. But from them, let's come back to Premier Drives who are fighting for overall position. That's Sander Tabbers in the second of the Corvettes as he heads into the left-hander of turn at number 3. And as he does so, sweeping around the outside of Pete Piver there to retake 11th place overall, a 10th place in the Premier class. In fact, there have been a few drives in the Premier class who've really come through. Sander Tabbers is one of them. Pete Piver is another. Some have really sprung some surprises in. Others have lost out considerably, including Denny Blogers all the way down in 21st place overall. So some surprises in certain. Some they'll be glad about, and some they won't be, depending on your perspective and who you're cheering on. But right now, one thing that's been not surprising, but something we've been certain of, and we absolutely love it, is some brilliant race at Sebring in the Evolution Sim Racing GT3 Championship. But as all this continues on, we look to your second place man for a brief moment, Ricard Luiz Pereira. We look back from the rear of his car, and as we do, the Ford Mustang there of James Howarth right now, it's close, it's looking menacing, but the Vulcan Motorsport Silver driver is absolutely delivering a gold-plated run of a lap here, and therefore he's able to make sure that Howarth does not get close, albeit some purple sectors now started to come through from these two. Stalsmore is responding at the front of the field. He does have a 4-second gap, all as a result of Steve Rubino really putting himself in a place that nobody wanted him to be, which was up into second very early on. And very shortly, we are going to get a replay of the race start procedure, and we will get the story first of what happened to Peter Duke right at the start, but we then do come to Steve Rubino's absolutely magical race start that's going to make his way through. And in fact, we can begin to get that replay footage, ladies and gentlemen. I believe it is coming on through now, and here we go then. This was Peter Duke's race start, and what a nightmare it was. So as we take a look back, well, it was Duke in the 3-wide situation initially, but then to 2-wide with Luiz Pereira as he came into the braking zone. A tap there with the Portuguese driver, sent him all the way round into the barrier and collapsed the rear right suspension, and Peter Duke's race was over from there. Well, that is absolute heartbreak for Peter Duke. You can understand why the car had to be retired with that damage to the barrier. There was no coming back, so it would have to have been towed. It would have been a long time loss, and therefore Peter Duke's race in tears. But as we then take a look at the green flag start, well, we ride on board then with Steve Rubino. And watch this, ladies and gentlemen. What a lightning start here from Steve Rubino. So as they make the way along, they get the call that it's race time, and as they do, we can see he gets the drop there in the Ford Mustang. Immediately looks to go around the outside of Nick Stubb. Everyone's fighting over to the left-hand side here, so what does he say? Well, if nobody wants the road in front of me, I'll just simply take it. Sweeps around Duke and what is there, Ricard Luiz Pereira fighting side by side. Rubino's already around Howarth. He's now side by side, and you can see him there in the rear view mirror, so Howarth comes back on through. But at this point, looking around the outside there's contact, so Howarth was caught on the inside, had to back off through risk of contact with Luiz Pereira, and Rubino just swept his way around the outside and got the job done there. And what an incredible move from Steve Rubino to move into second place. Yes, he was aided by the contact between Luiz Pereira and Peter Duke, but sometimes you've got to make your own opportunities, and that is exactly what he was able to do, Steve Rubino, to make it all the way into second for a brief moment before this man then made his way back through from the hairpin run in towards turn number 10 at the later point of the lap. We also did have a bit of an incident for one of the drivers a bit further back, I believe, and that was for Stuart Rice on lap number 2. And here's a replay of what happened to Rice, and this was coming through, I believe, is that turn number 10? We'll just have to wait and see, confirm our bearings. It's not turn number 10 there. Yes, it was turn number 10. I was right the first time. Oh my good lord, and that was a very nasty month. Now I think a bit of power oversteer coming out of Collier bend at 11, put him on the exit curbing, kicked the car up into the air over the high curbs, and as he rejoined, we had to get the car settled down, see where the steering was pointing right, and that's how the Ellis Racing B crew started to make some progress on him. So Stuart Rice there having a bit of a nightmare moment, a place you don't normally have moments like that, but it all went wrong for Stuart Rice. But right now as we come back to your live racing, well, we are 10 minutes into this 60-minute race, and there's plenty of good out there as the drivers roar the way onwards, and we've got James Howarth all over the back of Ricard Luiz Pereira. These two still fighting for position as we look back to Scott Kostrich here, and that's getting very dicey between Kostrich and Shrewsbury. And well, we do know that these two have a little bit of rivalry between them, but I think that rivalry right now is definitely getting a little bit more temperamental as they come into Sunset Bend. The Porsche versus the Acura, two cars have been very strong this season, and Charlie Stoffard says, well, if you don't mind, I'm going to get involved as well. How about that, guys? Do you mind? And Charlie Stoffard right now, I think he doesn't care who he races at the end of the day. We love to see this from the man as he makes his way down down the start finish straight in that McLaren car round in the rear of the pitch. That's Craig Tillotson who's practically entered the pit lane on a spin out of Sunset. Hopefully he's able to reverse away from the pit lane, otherwise he might be forced to take a pit stop that he doesn't want to take. And as I try to head on through, well, as they make the way on towards turn at number 3 right now, Stoffard has separated Kostrich and Sheesby forced back, and Christian Maliskov now looking up the inside here of Sheesby coming into turn number 3, and Stoffard are right now really being a nuisance to the Premier drivers, but a fun nuisance we can say for the purpose of shooting it in. But I can imagine the Premier drivers around him, well, will be Kostrich, he'll be grateful, and the fact he's for Sheesby backwards or Maliskov, but I can imagine Dean Sheesby right now might be muttering a few words, and well, they will not be necessarily pleasant, but that's the racing spirit. But as he comes on down to the braking zone there, with Sheesby going just as defensive as offensive versus Stoffard to make sure Maliskov doesn't get any inventive ideas, and they come through all line and stern for the moment, but brilliant racing between all these drivers, no doubt about it. And Stoffard right now, if he's making a claim that at some point he's going to be racing the Premier class, I think right now he's definitely putting a staple down as they head into the braking zone here. Sheesby out the inside. Sheesby really not happy with Stoffard being there. Stoffard turns in and Sheesby gets his elbows out there. Well, I think Sheesby in the end deciding, you know what, if we're going to trade some paint in order to get this done, I might as well trade it now whilst there's an opportunity to do so. It forces Stoffard behind Rolf Turfkir there as they come through 10 into 11. A tap on the rear of Stoffard's car from Baker, who gets a little bit close under the concertina effect into Tower Corner, but that does put Stoffard down to 4th place in Evo and 19th place overall. Turfkir just takes the place off him there, and I imagine Stoffard's going to be coming back very quickly. Just a light tap between the two of them, and Sheesby in the end getting his elbows out there to take the place back, because he wants to go hunting after Kostrich. You can understand why, and I think those two might have a gentle word with each other after the racing, but I'm sure they'll be able to sort it all out. But as I try to come onto the Allman Straight once again, with the racing right now absolutely fantastic here, as here comes Maliskov looking to chase down Sheesby. In fact, Sheesby's got a little bit of damage on the front end of the car, on the front right side. The aero is definitely wrapped around that front right tire. Maliskov's going to try and go around the outside for Rhino Academy, and as they come around there, well, he's going to have to go out deep. Is Maliskov. That's going to enable the Acura drive to get the power down a little more comfortably. But now as they make the way out, Sheesby there, making sure they use all the width of the circuit to take the place back as they head down towards turn number 1. Into a long sweeping left hand they go. We're looking around the outside as Maliskov here. Can he get it done? And the answer is no, he can't. Sheesby in the end just nailing that run through the corner, and Maliskov having to watch, wait and listen from them. Robin Milton has just moved ahead of Vincent Loader coming out to turn number 1 in towards 2. We're going to get a replay of that shortly, but we're going to stay with the live pictures right now as they make their way down. You can see Loader there looking around the outside as they head down in the Dutch machine, and to the braking zone they go, and as they do, well, Milton now just holding the middle of the road there as he comes out of the hairpin, and the Acura NSX Evo driver absolutely doing a brilliant bit of defensive driving in order to keep Loader behind. But Loader says, okay, that's fine, but how about this? And as they come through, Fangio's now going to look around the outside of Milton down into turn number 10. Bostock behind just watches on eagerly here, and I think he's thinking to himself, okay, what if they take each other off? Can I capitalise on what is a 2-for-1 special? But Loader there back into the inside of Collier Cornet, now into the right-hander 12 and 11, and on 12 and 13, let's do the maths right, I can't count up as I count downwards this evening. And as they come through that right-hander, where it's a lovely move from Loader, and gets the place back there. Fantastic side-by-side racing action, and Vincent Loader back into 6th in Premier, 7th place overall, and now it's going to be John Ludbrook. Apologies for that's James Bostock. That's John Ludbrook's car there for the Kame GP2 Porsche team. He's just watching on from behind and trying to get involved into the fight, but it looks like Loader now might be starting to open up that gap a little bit. However, a little bit of drama further back. We had an incident for Rob Gregg. What's exactly happened to the Evo driver? And here's a replay. So this was Rob Gregg only moments ago for the Moonshiners Racing Club team as he makes his way through the final corner. Rear letting go. That happened to Tillotson only moments ago as well, and a little bit of a bump in the road there, the transition over the concrete seams, and that's what sent Gregg on around, but thankfully not all the way into the pit lane, unlike Tillotson, who was able to avoid the pit lane in the end, but I think he had to do a little bit of reversing back and forth in order to do so and avoid a forced pit stop. So we come back to your live racing. Mark Wesley is in the pit lane for an instant separate that we haven't quite caught on camera, and we haven't got a replay of at the moment, but as they charge the one down, well, here comes Ludbrook all over the back of Milton, this time it's turn number 1. Can he find a move, John Ludbrook? No, he can't, and the 114 Porsche stays where it firmly is. But as they head on around, we have had a change of position for James Howarth, has got ahead of Ricard Luiz Pereira into 2nd place. Here's a replay of that as well. And this was coming out the final corner, down the start finish straight, as they made the way onto lap number 6, coming on down then into the brackets over turn number 1, and Howarth then looking around the outside here, Luiz Pereira on the inside, and really letting that one go, not able to fight it into the apex, so Howarth sweeping on through. Luiz Pereira might use this as an opportunity to do some fuel saving as we come back to your live racing pitch. Indeed, so much action going on the left, right and centre at the Sebring circuit. You can understand we can't catch it all, but thankfully to the power of replays and media, we can catch it after the fact has happened. But 15 minutes complete. We've still got plenty of race distance to unfold here. The best part of 45 minutes plus also the final lap of racing. And for Milton and Lubret fighting over 8th place overall. There's still more to come further down the order as we do have what is a little bit of a tasty battle with that. Hold the phone there, as that is going to be John Lubret going around the outside. Well, in fact, not going around the outside of Robin Milton. That's Vincent Loader going slowly. So I think Loader having a bit of a moment there coming out of turn number 10. A bit of power oversteer, dropping all the way down to 9th place as James Bostock now catches up behind. So Loader there with an uncharacteristic error. I think pushing a little bit too hard in the Porsche. And as he brings himself back together, loses 2 places for the price of 1 solo mistake. And now he's going to have James Bostock right in his rearview mirror. But from him, one driver who we haven't really talked about since the start, Sander Tabbers, up into 11th in a Corvette C8R Z06 GT3 that really hasn't been on the pace this season for himself or Craig Tillerson in the Premier class. He's almost in the top 10. Well, right now, Tabbers could be on course for one of his best results of the season if things carry on. We ride on board the dashboard here of the 128, and as he heads in towards the final corner, heading towards Sunset Bend, well, Tabbers right now definitely a very different nature Corvette today. He seems to be a much happier car as he comes through the long right hand of the complete lap. He's chasing after Bostock. Of course, strategy a big part here as Bostock almost makes marriage to the wall and coming down towards turn number 1. Well, you can see there Bostock did have to lift out. I think he was going to hit the wall. He's grinded against it slightly because Tabbers very close, looking around the outside here, but through the left hand they go, and as they do, Tabbers trying to switch back here. This is going to give him a lot of momentum into 2 and 3. He's going to think about it. Well, he's got to make a decision now, and his decision is he's not going to go for it. He's going to hold back, but I think another part of him wanted to go for that move, but I don't think he wanted to risk it there because he's definitely putting some mental pressure on the Briton in front of him. And right now the Dutchman in a Corvette that really has not been a star of the show in recent rounds, well, right now it's definitely becoming a bit of a star here at Sebring as they make their way through Big Bend and down towards turn number 7. But the gap opens up, and with it we come off board the car as he has got Pete Piver and Robin Aston closing up behind, and then Andrew Montine, the 2nd place Evo driver. Well, he's in a comfortable 14th place at the moment. The problem is he's nowhere near close to Steve Rubino, the leader of Evo, who's all the way up in 5th place. But Rubino's laps, to give you a comparator, a 2-minute flat 0.27 versus Montine's 201.22. I think right now the question is, how far can Rubino open up that lead compared to the rest of the Evo field? And I think the answer is going to be, if he carries on this pace, absolutely huge. But meanwhile, looking for the front of the field to practice what is Noah's Ark for racing here further down the order. That's 2 by 2 by 2 in towards the hairpin. Oh, everyone's getting very squirrely with each other there. That's Rob Gregg and Stuart Weiss trying to trade paint, and 2 Acuras behind. Oh my good lord, and that is a Ferrari going around. That's Matthew Hunter who goes all the way to the wall. That was snapping loose, and in the end I think it might have been escorted off the road a little bit. But from them, well, Eduardo Dino and Craig Tillerson having a little bit of an argy-bargy here as they come down into turn number 10, and the Verano Academy Corvette right now trying to fight its way through. And I think Tillerson just enjoys racing everybody out here. It doesn't matter which class he's in, he just enjoys getting into the tussle, and that's going to see Eduardo Dino drop all the way down. But what exactly is heading Matthew Hunter off the circuit in an exiting stage right on the camera? Well, we will be able to get a replay, and here it is, ladies and gentlemen. And for Matthew Hunter, well, as he came out the corner, he got the power down. The car segues one way, then the other, comes through the right and kick, touches the grass very briefly. You'll notice the rear left tyre did so, and that upset the car. So in the end, he made it with his own volition, trying to look for some space on the circuit to make his way past the 2 Acuras that are rolling roadblock. But in the end, it blocks his own race by putting it into the wall, unfortunately. And we're sorry to see that for the Ferrari driver, but I believe he's going to try and limp it to the pit lane. If so, good on him, because we'd love to see the fast pair and see him get back out there. But we come back to live racing just in time, as this is going to be Andina up the inside of Tillerson into the final corner. Tillerson's going to try and hold it around the outside of Sunset Bend. As he does so, this is the corner that called him out a few laps ago. Doesn't have any aspirations to catch him out this time. Makes the corner 2 wide, and Andino on a tight line won't carry the speed onwards, as now Tillerson will start surge back ahead here as they have their drag race in towards the corner. Wesley Van Rens is into the pit lane for, I believe, his scheduled stop, so he's deciding to go very early. And well, Van Rens has been really the stalwart, the advocate for the undercut strategy, as that is Denny Ploger. Well, not Denny Ploger, that is Daniel Paul having a very slow run there, as he had an instant at turn number 1. I think he might have had a big spin, and he's decided to bring it back together. So Daniel Paul has gone around, but parked it on the inside of turn 1 to avoid being in the way of everyone. So a bit of drama there, but the big thing is, look at my contact booth window, they have serviced Van Rens' car. So Van Rens is back out there after a stationary stop, a time of 23 seconds almost. So Van Rens has called the undercut, and could that move through the field as Dean Sheesby there? That's off at turn number 10. He's gone deep as the Acura driver, and as he brings himself back on for Moonshiners Racing Club, that puts him all the way down in 17th place behind Christian Malaskov and Robin Milton. Milton separately has been in an instant that has seen him go all the way down the running order, has Robin Milton. And well, I believe we can get a replay of what happened to Robin Milton, and here it is, ladies and gentlemen, a quick look to the driver who at one point was fighting inside the top 10. When he made his way there out of turns number 10 into 11, into 12 he then went onto the brakes. Does the rear come around? The answer is yes, it does. You can see that the road surface transition code for 12, and well, the rear of the car just bouncing loose there with a bit of oversteer as he made his way through. Probably a downshift that came in a little bit later than normal, plus the suspension traversal, and that sent the Acura around, being able to bring it back together. But for the number 115, the 155 driver, that's a drop from the top 10 all the way down to fighting for the top 15 as we do return it to live racing. Now he has got Christian Malaskov and Dean Sheesby behind. Sheesby has fallen back a little bit. Malaskov once again getting very close as we come back to your live racing 20 minutes into this race, and Malaskov right now absolutely feral here, but we love to see he's looking to battle left, right and centre as he heads into turn one, looks around the outside. Milton covers off the inside there. There's multiple lines you can take for the opening corner, but as they head on through, well, one thing about Gender B corner is that you need to carry all the speed up towards turns 2 and 3 to make a move to success, and Malaskov not quite able to do so as Milton controlling the pace for now. But through the right and into left they go, and with everything that's happening further down the order, well, it would be good to talk a little bit about what's happening at the front of the order. At the very front, here's Krista Starsmore, and he is 3.8 seconds clear of James Howarth. And those are your two leaders, but bringing along the rear is Ricard Luiz Pereira in third place, only half a second, if that, off the back of Howarth. And the point being that whilst in the early stages, Starsmore was able to open up a 4-second gap, that gap has come down to 3.6 seconds on average, and the lap times are now starting to move in favour of Howarth and Luiz Pereira. Luiz Pereira, the last lap, at 2 minutes 0.44, Howarth at 2 minutes 0.52, Starsmore at 2 minutes 0.65. Now, Starsmore might be trying to fuel save in order to give himself a little bit of a buffer on strategy, because he'll know, particularly Luiz Pereira, who's running in third, he has the right to fuel save behind the Mustang, given the fact that he's running so close to the back of Howarth that he can afford to lift off the throttle a little bit. But it is all looking as up at the moment. Starsmore is dictating this race, but strategy may have other ideas. Nick Stubb as well, don't count him out in the fourth place at 169 Porsche. The Porsche 992 driver right now for the Vulcan Fasters by Glass Tech Racing is doing very well there, and I wouldn't be surprised if he moves a little bit closer towards the top three over the course of the pit stops. He is one of those drivers who definitely has proven to be a little bit of a silent but deadly driver when he gets it right as he comes out of the final corner. Nobody pinning into the pits at the moment. He decides to stay out there. They're all enjoying their run, and then in fifth place, there's Steve Rubino, your Evo leader, and right now Rubino lapping consistently in the 2 minute zeros. This is phenomenal going from Rubino, really a different person and driver we see compared to the midway point of the season, even the early stage of the season where everything went wrong with how much fuel they put in the car, the setup they put on the car, they just couldn't get it right. But right now, with everything clicking together, the number 27 driver here is absolutely flying. But speaking of flying here, we've got more flying battle in action between Christian Malaskov and Sheesby as they come across the line. This time Malaskov looks to the outside. This is the fight for 14th place in Premier and what is 16th place overall. Malaskov again cutting back, looking to try and carry all the speed, but this is a brilliant run from Malaskov. But the problem is he's going to have to look around the outside, as Sheesby says. You're going to have to go the long way round, my friend. And as they come very well, Malaskov's not going to faint out of this. 2 while they come into 4, and again Sheesby, well, right now maybe under a lot of pressure, but the one thing that Sheesby is not forgetting to do is how much width he can give a driver versus how awkward he can make it for a driver to pass him, and doing it again there through turn 4, completely legal, forcing Malaskov to have to take a little bit of curb, and you don't want to take these raised curbs here at Sebring in any of these GT3 machines. And Sheesby now has got Malaskov trying to go all the way around the outside, but Malaskov goes way too deep. As he does so, well, he has to back off again. So right now Sheesby, for everything that Malaskov can throw at him, Sheesby has got an answer as they head in towards turn number 10 once more. We're down to that braking zone, and Malaskov only a tenth behind. Thinks about going late on the brakes. We can see Sheesby puts the car in the middle of the road, makes Malaskov have to double think about everything, and that's what Sheesby's so good at doing. He just simply makes you question why you want to overtake him at certain corners, or how much you want to sacrifice in order to try and make an overtake, and by the end of it, you're not going to gain anything out of it. But a ball run there coming out of turn at number 13. I think Malaskov backed off there. I think there was a little tap under braking, so they resume the races to go to Bishop Corner. Through the course they go. We ride on board looking back for the rear of the 152 Acura, and as it comes in towards turn number 15, well, again, I think we're going to see here the rinse repeat, which is Malaskov closes up on entry to the corners and through to the apex, but then Sheesby just proves to be a bit of a nuisance and then can just pull away, given the fact he's taken Malaskov's momentum away, as Malaskov takes a brief run wide, a small sojourn off the circuit, albeit there will be an off track, but I think he's got plenty of instant points he can use as they head down towards turn at number 17, where he's closing little by little is Malaskov, but the thing is, little by little is too late unless he can do a huge London to break in, but he's not going to do it from there. Too far back, and Sheesby goes round, absolutely loses the rim. Malaskov in the end is able to steer clear, and Sheesby's rear tyres in, just let go. Bumper comes off there, and I think that is the car of Roll Turfcure that just suddenly loses its front bumper. There's teammates, they're in contact. Denny Ploger and Turfcure come together. It's drama there at what is the Dutch team and the MJK Sim Racing team. In the end, it's all gone wrong, and it's going to be Turfcure and Sheesby both into the pit lane for different reasons. One with scorched tyres, the other missing the front bumper, and I think Denny Ploger's had to tow, despite the fact he was only about 100 metres to the pit lane. You could not make that up. And whilst all that's happening, we come back to what is at the top 10 of the field. And this is James Bostock fighting with Pete Piver and also Robin Aston as they head into the braking zone. And Piver right now under pressure to go forward because Robin Aston in the sister with GP2 Porsche team, Super GP2 Porsche versus Carbo GP2 Porsche, and the LS Racing B driver finds himself right and certainly tucked in the midst of it with Andrew Montine, the second place Evo driver, just watching this right now. Thinking, can you not all settle this outside of my purview as they roar the way into turn number 10? These Premier drivers right now don't think they even know the Evo driver's right there, albeit Montine been a little bit silent, but I think he's going to make his voice heard shortly because he is losing time right now tucked in behind. You can see how close as Alexis Simsports driver gets to the back of Aston, who's all off the racing line. They're coming out of 10 for 11, 12 and into 13. And now Aston returns to the racing line, but how much time does it cost him? And the answer is it cost him 4 attempts off the back of Pete Piver as they head in towards Bishop Corder. But through the left and into the right they go, and as they come into that right hand that starts off the Le Mans sequence, a little bit of trivia for you. In the early days of racing at Sebring, where they used a bit more of the airfield and the runway strips, one of the things that made the circuit very difficult to race at, particularly in low lighting conditions, so as it got later and later into the day, was the fact they didn't have proper road markings as you now see in terms of the white painted lines. And I kid you not, multiple drivers had to retire from endurance races around here, particularly those that went in tonight, for the simple reason they'd lose sight of the track, they'd lose where they were on the circuit, and they'd end up driving deeper and deeper into the airfield, and by the time they realised where they were so far off the pace, they were so far back out of the race, alternatively they could not find their way back to the circuit, and they actually had to officially retire from the racing there. So a little bit about Sebring in the early days. This was a circuit that was just as much about surviving and also finding your way around it, because of course you don't have a sat nav when you go racing, particularly in those early days, and even in these modern days, and therefore the Sebring circuit definitely seen a few drivers go astray, if you will, as they went racing here in the US state of Florida. But as they come down to the braking zone here, these drivers not going astray right now, all staying close together. Mark De Vries in the STL machine, the Ferrari 296. He's still enjoying his race as he chases after Charlie Stoffard. These two not changing places, but very close there to the back of the McLaren driver, who's running third in Evo and 17th place overall. Through the left, into the right and left they go for turns 4 and 5, and De Vries gets close, but he doesn't get close enough, as in the pit lane, I believe we still have Plerga, who's having the repair work done. Tabbers and Sheesby are still in there, and I think they are going to be having very long pit stops, albeit Tabbers, he's had a quick pit stop. I should correct myself, Sheesby's still having some work done on the car. I think all the tyres are being changed on it, given the big scorching of the tyres that he did have, whereas Tabbers, meanwhile, well, it's a traditional pit stop, and that's moved him back up into 19th place in the Premier class there, given the fact he's passed Sheesby in the pit lane. The drivers are roaring through. Well, we've still got the best part of half an hour plus the final lap of this race to go. Plenty of strategy still to unfold as well. We've only had some early pit stops for some drivers, and the one driver that everybody's got the big question mark about is this man. For Racing League Hub, Wesley Van Rens, the first driver to take his scheduled pit stop, and we've seen him do this a number of times this season in the feature races in the Evo class. We're going for the undercut nice and early, has normally benefited him, but the problem is in front of him, he's got James Pallant and Roll Turf Cura. We hasn't jumped Turf Cura as of yet, but Turf Cura has lost a lot of places as a result of that instant between himself and Denny Plerga coming out to the final corner. I don't think we've got a replay of that queued up currently, but Van Rens right now trying to find a way back into this race, and for Miller, particularly his championship rival, Will Miller, if he's not aware of this right now, he's got to be wary of the fact that at some point when he does come in, he may find this car, depending on how quickly he can maintain his pace around here, he may find that this Ferrari suddenly leaps ahead of him. Say, weren't too far away from each other when we did have Van Rens come into the pit lane. He had been muscled down a little bit, but Miller was still right there in the hunt. But as they continue to push onwards, well, strategy is just one big part of all the racing. There's so many different aspects of the racing around here. It's absolutely brilliant to see. But let's come all the way back up to the man in second place, as we do say hello to El Hunter there. He's chilling on the 154, James Howarth, as he comes out of Big Bend and down towards turn number 7. Now, as he does so, well, Howarth still has Ricard Luiz Pereira right behind him. 4 to 5 tenths is the average gap. 5 tenths really, to be more precise. And as they head on through, they haven't really changed places over the last couple of laps, but what is very telling is we bring a little bit of data up on screen, I believe, shortly if we can bring the relative times between the two drivers up on screen, because what we can tell you is just how much the battle for lap time is swinging back and forth between Howarth and also what is Christopher Starsworth. Give us a brief moment, we might be able to do so. So the time delta here we'll start off with, and that is the gap, and you'll notice that over the last few laps that gap has started coming down. But there we just have the bars. We don't really have any data, but those bars can mean something. But what about the lap time, I hear you ask? Well, there you go, and that gives you a bit more of a picture as to who's the fastest driver out of the ball. And Howarth right now, the fastest of himself, Starsworth and Luiz Pereira. Keep in mind the accurate driver is of course boxed in behind the Mustang. We believe he's doing some fuel fuel saving here and matching his pace to Howarth. But that gap is heading up the way James Howarth and going towards the end of this lap. Look at that picture there. That picture, all three of them on screen, tells you a story, and that is Starswell is no longer able to pull away. That gap is gradually coming down. The last time round, it was 4 attempts that we saw Howarth gain on his rival, but this time round, as they head on through, we will have to wait to see if Starswell there, very close to the inside wall, thought he might be considering a pit stop. He decides not to. I don't think Starswell would consider a pit stop. Howarth comes across the line as well. So for Starswell, that was a 2 minute 0.25. What was a decent lap. Howarth comes across the line, a 2 minute 0.05. Ricard Luiz Pereira, fastest lap of the race, and the first driver to dip below the 2 minutes into a 1:59.88 for Luiz Pereira, a 8.78 to be precise. So right now, Howarth and Pereira are starting to close on the leader, and the gap is incrementally coming down. This is going to make the pit stops very close. I think this may be done in the pits in terms of the running order, and I think we might have some fireworks towards the end of the race between all of them, as now most of our drivers are starting to make their pit stops further down the field. Nobody in this group wants to pit. None of them want to come out in traffic. And that's the main thing they've got on their minds, because they know if they do come in and end up coming out in traffic, that's their race over. They will lose the ability to contest. They'll have to fight the way through. And given the amount of tyre degradation they'll be picking up here, this circuit, Sebring, is very aggressive on the left-hand side tyres, because it is, at the end of the day, a clockwise circuit. So it's dominated by right-hand corners, but there are a lot of traction zones which put a lot of pressure on the rear left tyre. And you've also got some quite aggressive extensive corners, particularly Sunset Bend, the final corner, which will take a lot of life out of the front left tyre. Put it all together, you need to protect those tyres, but you've also got some quite aggressive left-handers, such as the opening corner, and also turns 3 and 5, where you will be loading up that front right tyre a lot, and also the traction zones, which will take some life out of the rear light tyre. But you won't have time necessarily to change all 4 tyres in the pit lane, so you have to take a gamble. And a lot of drivers most likely will be just changing left-hand side tyres, so therefore they need to protect the right-hand side tyres for later on in the race. But coming on around and in towards the next few laps, one driver who right now is feeling a little bit of pressure as well will be none other than Christian Malaskov, who continues to make his way through. Albeit at the moment he's in a bit of clear space as he heads in towards turns 12 and 13. He was enjoying an absolutely brilliant back and forth battle between himself and Dean Sheesby until Sheesby went around and he's trying to chase down Robin Milton. But he has also had some of his competitors around him make pit stops here, so he'll find himself tucking into a running order in due course. But one man right now who finds himself right in a running pack, however, he's not going to be in this pack for very long, is Mathew Hunter, who we see here for Simcast Racing UK. And the reason for this is, you may remember at this very corner as he exited it, he made his way into the barrier. He has since then got himself back out of the circuit. But the problem for Mathew Hunter is the fact that all the drivers around him have already taken their scheduled pit stops. He's yet to take his scheduled pit stops. So you do the strategic maths, and what you come to realise is that Hunter right now is on a very different strategy, and therefore he's here enjoying the racing. But I can imagine that when he comes into the pits, he'll be a bit gutted that he won't be racing with these drivers. He'll be first further down the order towards the likes of Daniel Paul, Jan Nagy and Alex Boniface. And well, wherever Hunter races, I'm sure he'll be enjoying himself out there with the Ferrari 296 drive. Just hasn't clicked together so far today. But never say never. We've still got a lot of race distance to go, and he might be able to pull off some magic. But from a driver in the Evo class who needs a bit of magic, right now a driver in the Premier class who is putting together some magic out there is James Bostock. He holds on to 9th place overall, 8th place in Premier, albeit yet to pick compared to some of his rivals. He's got Robin Aston for the Sumo GP2 Porsche team for company as he comes down in towards turn number 7 there. Through the right-hander he goes. Will come a GP2 Porsche driver who has had some great results this season. And one of the things he was telling me in the build-up to this season, I'm sure he'll allow me to mention this, was the fact he was just excited to be on the grid for Split B. And he was targeting at perhaps a top 5 finish over the season and was even dreaming of a podium. Well, he's definitely put together some podiums. He was even close to a race win at one point, but it went away. But the one thing that is certain, that I think Bostock, when he looks back at this season so far, he's definitely superseded or exceeded his expectations, and I think right now he can continue to raise his bar even higher here, as he's definitely hunting the top 10 finish today over and in the Premier class. And who can blame him for such a great drive? Robin Aston there though with him will try to deny him that top 10 finish overall and in the Premier class. And Andrea Montina watching on here, well, I think he'll be grateful they're not fighting, because he can just enjoy his strategy for second place in the Evo class. A bit further back, there's the McLaren 720S in Evo, 3rd place, and that is Owen Stewart. He's running in 15th place overall. And the number 21 driver here definitely has been one of those drivers. He may not have the speed out of the box compared to the likes of Charlie Stoffard, but the one thing he does have is the consistency over the distance, and that is definitely showing right now. He's really measuring this race out, albeit with the pit stop still to come. We'll have to see whether that puts him back in the order, as Charlie Stoffard has taken his pit stop, but I suspect we might see a bit of a coming together. A number of drivers in at the Evo class towards the end, and one of the big remarks is that Wesley Van Rens is now up to 6th place in Evo, and he is, I believe, the leading Evo driver who has pitted. So Van Rens is making up time as a result of this major undercut strategy. So this is working out for him, but how far is it going to take him? That is going to be the question that we need the answer to, as we've got some more pit stops playing out. James Howarth in the pit lane. Steve Rubino from the Evo lead in the pit lane. The Hobo Racing machine following the DXT Motorsports machine in. Robin Aston in, as we do see there Rubino coming down off the Jags. Well, in fact, no, that was Howarth coming down off the Jags. His car leaves the pit lane then. As he makes his way on down, they would have changed at least 2 tyres there in the time that was permitted. Because remember, they can take fuel and change the tyres simultaneously. The rule set was changed at the start of this year to go with the IMSA regulations. And as they come on around, well, Steve Rubino here makes his way back out, and where he will be in 3rd place in Evo class. So he's not going to lead every lap in Evo, but he's got to keep in mind that Seward and also Montine have yet to take the strategic pit stops. So Rubino is effective class leader in Evo at the moment in 14th place, and that goes to show you such an advantage. He has pulled over the field, over the distance, and he will continue to try and to do so. But coming back to Mark De Vries, as he makes his way on around it, coming in 25th place, chasing after Grant Miller and Charlie Stoffard. Well, Miller has taken his pit stop, and it's not working out for Grant Miller. In fact, look at this picture, and you can see that Wesley Van Rens is ahead of Miller, despite pitting much earlier. That is the undercut really being deployed. So Grant Miller, in fact, has lost out as a result of the pit stops, and he's behind Charlie Stoffard even. So this is a fight, we believe, effectively for 5th place or 4th place in Evo right now between these two. And Stoffard is ahead of Miller, so Miller right now has got to try and find his way past perhaps arguably the most aggressive of the Evo drivers out there, and that's not to be rude about Charlie Stoffard, but he really knows how to use that McLaren 720S as a weapon to fight and also to defend. And Miller's going to have his work cut out for him if he wants to get this done, with De Vries right behind him. And I wonder whether Mark De Vries is going to let the Evo 2nd place driver in terms of the championship class going into tonight, where he's going to let him have the fight, or whether De Vries might be eager to make some progress past him as well, given the fact that he's going to be chasing down Scott Kostrich, who is 10 seconds up the road if he wants to try and gain another premier position. We'll have to wait and see how it plays out between them as more pit stops taking place, including a pit stop for our race leader. Now, this is important. Christopher Starsmore into the pits. As we do look to the blimp camera here, car parked up. Where is James Howarth? Well, here comes Howarth, making his way in towards the final corner shortly. Down the Allman Straight he goes. So will we see Howarth closer to Starsmore, because the lap times were turning in the favour of the Ford Mustang driver as he makes way through. Starsmore is leaving the pit lane. Well, as he does, he'll make his way off the pit limiter there, and I believe Starsmore has had a much quicker pit stop compared to Howarth. Where is James Howarth? And there's Starsmore going his way through the first corner, and then there's James Howarth. Well, Howarth's stationary time was 3 seconds longer compared to Starsmore, so I think Starsmore's done a lot of fuel saving, or if not, Starsmore has come out of the pit lane intentionally with a bit of underfueling in order to maintain track position, and in turn what he'll do, he'll most likely try to coast into the braking zones for at least a few laps over this distance in order to save the fuel. But the gap between Starsmore and Howarth is now up to 5.5 seconds here, and well, Howarth spending more time in the pits, but I can also imagine that Howarth might have put a bit more fuel in the car to absolutely go hammer and tongs that Ford Mustang's V8 engine and not hold anything back here. He won't want to worry about fuel. He'll most likely put some extra fuel in order just to give himself the confidence. You know what? You can go absolutely all in here all the way towards the end. You don't have to worry about the Mustang being the thirsty lady. The prancing pony will be able to just roar onwards. But from our two drivers who have made pit stops, the one who hasn't for the battle for the overall win, we do see Ricard Luiz Pereira here still making his way down the Allman Straight, still on his opening strategy in terms of his stint. And as he comes on now, Nick Stubbs close by, and Stubb, in fact, the last lap, Stubb has closed that gap down by 2.5 tenths. I think Stubb might be also playing a bit of strategic surprise. So this is going to get very interesting here, because Nick Stubb may inadvertently bring himself right in the hunt to the race win. Well, they both come into the pits, so now time will tell as John Ludbrook comes on around. I don't think they can take these fuel tanks any longer. I think they've got to come in at the end of this lap, because those fuel tanks will definitely now be screaming to be fueled up again. And well, as our two leaders on circuit make the way in, now here is going to become the pressure point. Who will be leading once they made the pit stop? The blimp camera's making its way around. Where is Starsmore? Here is Starsmore making his way down Auburn, about to go into Sunset Bend, and well, Luiz Pereira has been stationary for 10 seconds so far, so we're expecting at least another 10. Starsmore comes on through the final corner, then make his way around. No car in front of him really, other than Owen Stewart, I believe, but that's not going to obstruct him at all as he'll pull to the right hand side. But there's Luiz Pereira. He's leaving the pit lane right now. Nick Stubbs leaving as well, a little bit further back. Luiz Pereira with only an 18-second stationary stop. This is going to be close. Starsmore makes his way down towards turn number 1. Where is he in relation to Luiz Pereira? Luiz Pereira's already out the pit lane, and it's going to be a change of race lead, because Ricard Luiz Pereira on strategy has taken the lead this race ahead of Christopher Starsmore. Nick Stubb has got ahead of Howarth. He's up into third. So Starsmore and what is Howarth have both lost out versus Luiz Pereira and Stubb respectively. But this top four, if it comes together right now, there's a lot of questions to be asked. The first one is, has Luiz Pereira got enough fuel to get to the end, given he spent 2 seconds less than Starsmore in the pit lane? Another question to be asked. Stubb, up in the third, can he potentially now spring alive because his pace was coming together before they made their way into the pit lane? Has he intentionally been holding back and protecting tyres over that opening stint to give himself so much life? Well, the four drivers will all be coming together, and as they do, Steve Rubino, meanwhile, he won't be thinking about any of this. All he'll be thinking about in that 5th place right now is when is the end of the race, because I want to bank my race victory, and also what will be the highest finish from any Evo driver in this season's feature race. So 5th place overall, that will be an incredible result, and we'd love to have a chat with him after the race if we can in the post-round interviews. But still, from what we wish to do, from what our drivers are planning to do out on circuit, there's still more to come, as that is John Ludbrook over the back of Mathew Croft here for 5th place in Premier and 6th place overall. Well, as they make the way around, all the pit stops have now been taken, ladies and gentlemen, and that's how your classes line up with 20 minutes still left on the clock here at Sebring, and anything can happen before that checkered flag. As we do give ourselves a quick sip of water there, let's make sure we can bring this one home, as we've got plenty of distance to go. Will Croft and Ludbrook right now close together with a 4-second gap to Vincent Loader, and Vincent Loader conversely has really fallen away since that error that we did see about 20 minutes into the race that cost him the 2 places. He's not really recovered from it in terms of that gap, although it's not to say he's not pushing hard, but I wonder whether Ludbrook and Croft now have just been able to up the tempo by comparison, and that's what's causing the delta between them, because now for Loader, the 2-time winner at Le Mans, he's just not able to get close anymore, and it does look as though Loader right now are really in what is the rear guard action, and I can imagine James Bostock will take a bit of motivation to try and chase him down, as will Robin Aston, albeit they've been split out, and all the drivers here with very different pit stops, fuel saving, it's all come together here, and it's sprung some surprises. But what about any other surprises up and down the order? When Evo, it's Rubino, Montine and Seward. No change here in terms of the top 3. Van Rens has moved to full power, and Wesley Van Rens has pulled off a brilliant bit of strategy with that huge undercut to make his way ahead of Stoffard, Miller and Turf Courier, who are all right now trying to chase each other down. But just behind that is Mark De Vries, tucked in behind Stoffard, and what we were wondering whether De Vries would put a move on Miller. Yes, he did in the end, in order to move up into 20th place overall, and now De Vries is looking for another opportunity here as we ride on board as they come out of Sunset Bend. So De Vries close, but can he find a mover as they make the way down towards what will be turn number 1? Well, De Vries too close there to really make the move for Sunset. In fact, having to back the throttle off through the long right-hander, and to the long left he goes. Jindabi as he roars his way in towards that opening corner, carrying all the speed that the car bouncing around over the concrete slabs. Looks one way, then the other. Stoffard in the inputs in the middle of the road. De Vries looks around the outside, and Stoffard here really getting his elbows out here, trying to make that McLaren as wide as possible. De Vries thinks about it, and I think part of him says, I'm going to send it on him. The other part of him says, don't do it, because otherwise your race will be over, because there's no way through on a tight run through turns 4 and 5 like that. De Vries keeping this sensible head on here as they head down towards turn number 7. And as they roll the way down, we can see all the minuscule movements on the steering wheel there from De Vries. He can feel the bumps in the road. It's knocking that Ferrari about left, right and centre. Stoffard right now holding up that middle of the road, doing an absolutely brilliant job here of defending, and De Vries having to look left, having to look right, having to try and find a bit of magic here to make the move happen, but nothing forthcoming as he continues to see the flames spitting from the rear of the McLaren as it's twin-turbo V8 trying to run away from the 6-cylinder engine of the Ferrari with its turbo as well, roaring the way through at the double left here, up towards turns 12 and 13 they go. But for De Vries, it's all about playing the patience game here and just trying to make one move happen. But he does have Grant Miller only 8 tenths behind, and Miller getting closer as well, and the Ford Mustang driver wants to play a part in this. He'll want to get ahead of Stoffard in order to make sure the damage that Van Rens does to the championship battle between himself and Miller is not too significant. It'll be about damage limitation if he can't finish ahead of him. But from them now coming to our McLaren driver here of Piper, who wondering why he's going so wide coming from the final corner. That's because he's got Andrew Montine on his inside coming out Sunset Bend. These two fighting for overall position, fighting for 11th over on the circuit. Montine on the inside to outside now as they head down towards turn 1. Switches back to the inside. I think the second place Evo driver here, I think his patience might be running out a little bit. He wants to also try and move forward in order to take some more places to just buy himself the breather room, because he does have a 13-second gap to Owen Seward, who is 3rd place in Evo class, all the way down 16th place. But 13-second gaps with complacency, they suddenly become 10 seconds, then 3, and then suddenly your rival's right behind you, and plenty of distance still here with the time and the laps remaining, and you don't want to take anything for granted at Sebring. But speaking of one thing we can't take for granted is what's happening inside this top 4 overall, and next up at the moment has got James Howarth closing up on him, and in fact Howarth now very close to the back of him as they come out of the left into right. So however, taking all the fuel in the pit lane, I can imagine here that right now the DXT Motorsports driver will know he's got nothing to lose at this point. He had the longest pit stop of all 4 of the top 4. Well, the English driver now absolutely going all in. He's got to really in order to try and get this back. We know the Ford Mustang can be quite thirsty on fuel. I can imagine as well, however, really focusing in that opening stint, running second in clear air and just trying to maximise the lap time. And if Luiz Pereira and Christopher Stars will start to fight each other, the lap delta have a swing in the favour of Luiz Pereira at the moment. Well, this could really end up bringing that top 4 back together, but it relies on these 2 packs, these 2 pairs of drivers really working together in order to create that scenario for us. But we'll have to see what happens, as we do have 15 minutes left on the clock. Doing the quick mathematics as Luiz Pereira makes his way out of Sunset Bend, it does mean we are going to have the best part of 7 more laps, perhaps 8 more laps of racing here at Sebring, and the sun continues to set. I wouldn't be surprised the night lights are going to go on within the next 10 minutes as they roar the way through, because sunlight is now getting to really be a premium here, and we may finish in the dark as they head across that line. But however, not close enough. Luiz Pereira, your race leader, is definitely pulling away at the front of the field, and however having to look for an opportunity as they come through turn number 1. Out towards turns 2 and 3. He's much closer this time. He's away with the back of Stubb. Is he going to look up the inside into turn 3? Yes, he is. Stubb comes across, and Indian Howard has to back out slightly. Oh, there's a bit of slide there from Stubb, and Stubb just catching the car, and I don't think there was contact between them. I think Stubb in the end just trying to get the power down a little bit aggressively there, and it just sends the car slightly sideways, and a minor error cost Nick Stubb 3rd place, but it moves James Howarth up, and now Howarth will look to try and chase down Christopher Starswell in order to move further up. But Starswell, of course, at this point will look at his rearview mirror shortly and notice it's not the form of a Porsche anymore that's behind. Instead, it is the absolute brutish face of a Ford Mustang that's sunning into 3rd place. They'll be thinking, okay, I've now got to go some, because Starswell needs to finish 2nd as a minimum in order to limit how much Luiz Pereira pulls away in the championship. But roaring the way on through. It's one thing to think about it, it's another thing to do it. And speaking of doing things, well, we had a change of position for 9th place overall between Robin Aston and James Bostock. How did it happen, I hear you ask? Well, here's a replay to explain. It was only moments ago. Now it's coming down for a big bend. Bostock taking the natural racing line. Aston looking to the inside here, and I don't think Bostock really fought too hard over it. I think I can imagine that Bostock at this point really wanted to secure the position, albeit saying that Aston goes very deep, but Bostock in the end isn't able to capitalise by cutting back at him, and that's how the places were. Stops for Robin Aston in the end, getting through into 9th place overall, 8th in Premier. But coming back to your live racing in good time as well, as Mathew Croft and John Lubbert, the 2 Porsche 992 drivers, right now fighting over position as they roar the way into the Le Mans complex. Turns 15 and 16, making their way left into right, and then into the right-hander again as they come out of that turn at number 16. Well, it's a poor run there initially for Lubbert. That's going to put him a bit further back to the best part of 6 attempts here versus Mathew Croft, and Mathew Croft holding on to 5th in Premier Class at the moment, 6th overall. And I can imagine the 113 driver at this point won't be too happy about how this race is going, because he knows that Nick Stubb is up in 4th, and well, between them and the race leaders, Christopher Starswell, and then the race leader is his championship rival for the overall Premier Championship, and that is Ricard Luiz Pereira. And Mathew Croft finding this championship once again really falling out of his hands. It's almost as if it's liquid, and the fact you can't grab onto it, it's just slipping out of his hands and gathering the ball at his feet, and he's got to try and pick it up or really scoop it up every time as he roars his way through turn number 1. Well, right now that analogy really going everywhere and in every place of this circuit right now, because of the fact that for Mathew Croft, all he can focus on at this point in time is making sure he doesn't lose any places, and if he can do so, then I think he'll feel like he can wrestle some control of this championship with 2 rounds remaining over today. But of course, we've still got time over. It's not over yet, and anything can happen. It normally does, but we won't want a repeat. We won't want a repeat of what happened in race number 1 at Le Mans, no doubt about it. And well, we're going to skip away from him before the commentator's curse starts to make its way, because we've got more battling further down the order, and this is Stoffard versus De Vries. De Vries did get ahead, but now Stoffard is trying to come back at him as they head into one, and Mark De Vries there absolutely gripping on for dear life to the inside of the circuit, because as soon as he sees Charlie Stoffard behind him, the McLaren driver right now essentially saying to him, okay, you want to play, let's play. Was they come through turn number 3 and in towards 4 or 5. Well, De Vries here, the Dutchman, just gradually put away through at the tight sequence of corners there, and I wonder where Stoffard's tyres now might be feeling the pinch, because that has been his one weakness we have seen over the course of the season, where it be in the sprint race or the feature races. For all the pace he has early on, his tyres do start to lose life towards the end of the races, and that tyre life coming at a premium, and that McLaren will need tyre life in order to feel comfortable, particularly for these medium speed corners. Sunset Bend is where it'll be exposed a lot, and also through the opening corner turn number 1. But coming out of 7 and through Fangio they go. We can see De Vries gradually inching away, gapping to 3.5 tenths here, but Stoffard's still with him, and now having to cover off Milton, who's close behind as well. But Robin Milton not looking for an opportunity here, more just waiting to see what's in the wings as they roar the way in towards that turns 11, 12 and 13 once again. but around they come and out towards Tower Corner, and as they do, well, you can see Stoffard just gradually falling back just a little bit. I think Mark DeVries starting to get some control. Stoffard goes wide. That's going to give Robin Milton an opportunity now to look around the outside here, and Milton's not going to hesitate to do this, and as he does so, the Acura driver makes his way through, and Stoffard drops down to 21st overall. It's not a class position change, but the next driver will make it a class position change, because that's Grant Miller, who's getting closer and closer at the Ford Mustang, and this could be an important move if he wants to keep Van Rens within touching distance in the championship. We're coming out to turn 60 and down the back straight. Well, for Miller now, he'll know that it is Stoffard between himself and finishing one place behind Van Rens. And when you can't beat your rival, you've got to finish the one place behind them in order to do the damage limitation, as we said earlier. But down the straight they go, and still more time. 10 minutes plus that final lap to go as they come towards the end of this lap. And our race leader overall all the way out towards turn 10 already. Well, it does mean we are going to get 6 more laps of race, including the one they're going on to. And we're going to have a grand total of what will be 31 laps to transpire here today. Brilliant racing all the way through. In fact, 30 laps there. Let's do it correct. There'll be the 30th lap at which they end this race, I do believe. But the point being some absolutely magical laps of racing. And, well, Robin Milton right now coming under pressure. And Stoffard again. As Stoffard's been able to close up through one, up the inside, but backs off there. Hasn't got the grip, I think, or the confidence of the brake. He told that inside line to turn number 3. And Miller will close up onto this very quickly indeed as they make the way on around. Roaring the way through the left-hander. We jump aboard, looking down over the nose of number 18, the Scotsman here, close to Phoenix Racing. And as that Mustang brutishly roars its way along here, the wonderful sound of a 5-litre V8. There's nothing quite like it. Wonder braking they go into at turn number 7. But will there be any change here? And the answer is no, they weren't at the moment. Right into left they go, bouncing over the curbs there. And this Mustang, the one thing about it is a very stable car. But on the downsides, front engine rear drive, it doesn't naturally have a lot of rotation. It's a very heavy car as well compared to some of its rivals out there. So what it has on the straight and in terms of stability, it lacks in the natural rotation. You can see a bit of understeer there as Miller really slides loose under braking. Another thing as well is it is a weaker car to braking compared to many of its rivals in terms of the fact these brakes really do struggle, and the rear tyres, once they get hot, they lose the ability to shake off that temperature. We're coming out to turn number 13. Miller right now struggling for a moment, and that puts in the best part of 1.2 temps down, and will Grant Miller going from being close to being very far away. And, well, it feels as though things are out of touching distance once again today, but I'm sure he'll be able to get his head down and push onwards. As they head in towards the latter half of the lap, we have had a bit of a moment for Dean Sheesby, who's had to be towed to the pits. What exactly happened to the MRC driver? Well, let's find out. Well, this was down in towards turn at number 1 as he made his way in of his own volition really here in 24th place. Through a left-hander he went. The rear of the car snaps loose one way, then the other. He tries to correct it, and in the end, the correction proves to be too much into the barrier. And Dean Sheesby, you can see there the rear suspension collapsed on the rear right, and that was his race in arrears. He tried to get it turned around, get it off the racing line, but it wasn't going any further than that. Well, as we come back to your live racing, more still to come, ladies and gentlemen. Further back down the order, we've got a bit of a scrap here between Sean Clark, Stuart Rice and Rob Gregg. Well, particularly Rice versus Gregg, as that Rice versus Clark, I should say. It's the DXT Motorsport driver on the right of your picture versus the driver on the left end. The Acura are coming into that corner. The Blue Sky Esports trying to hold in that inside line, but very tight to the wall there. I think deciding to be very sensitive with his braking zone, wondering exactly where the car's going to react. But now Gregg is under pressure from another Acura, and that is going to be Clark is going to be under pressure from another Acura, and that will be the car of Gregg, as I get my names mixed up. And roaring their way down towards turn number 1, in towards the braking zone they go. Will there be any change here? And Rob Gregg, unfortunately, not able to come through, but Stuart Rice making a smooth move, but Rob Gregg having to find it a little bit more. It's got to be a bit more forthcoming as he fights for 8th place. And Evo, but that's a dive to the inside their version of the Porsche, and well, Sean Clark sees it coming and says to Gregg, okay, you've made it to the apex before me, I'm going to let it go. And well, Sean Clark seems to be struggling a little bit, and Rob Gregg is going to capitalise on Clark's struggles as he makes the swap for position there, and some key points gained in their fight inside at the top 10 of the championship. But through the right-hander at turn number 6 they go, up towards turn 7, and will Clark come back here in the Porsche 992? And the answer is no, he went too far back there, and even despite the strength of the brakes in that Porsche, even that distance is not going to be enough for him to be able to consider a move. We're coming upwards towards turn number 10, and as they do, we look to Pete Piver, who's recently been in a little bit of a moment. I think he's had a bit of a sideways moment on the circuit from over here in my ear. He's got Christian Malaskov close behind, and Malaskov looking at another opportunity with right on board with the Porsche 992 Verona Academy driver looking to the inside here as he heads into turn number 17. Side by side they enter. Malaskov really right now trying to make some more places, trying to get into what is 11th place in the Premier class. Side by side they exit the corner. Brilliant battling then as they come down the start finish straight, and well, it's going to be Piver on the inside, Malaskov on the left, and in in the end as he comes across contact between the two of them and will ricochet off each other. That's going to see Piper take the position back. I think Mathew Croft recognising that if they make any more contact, they could both be in the wall, and it could be tears before the race is over, and Mathew Croft won't want that. He wants to carry on the good set of points finishes he's had recently as he tries to come back at Piper, but I think they're both trying to crowd each other into the same space, and we didn't quite work out, but both drivers doing enough to avoid making the further contact. From them, we look a little bit further back to the start finish straight, and that is going to be Robin Milton trying to go around the outside of Mark De Vries, and he sweeps around the outside there for Phoenix Racing in the accurate NSX Evo, and De Vries under pressure from his good friend Charlie Stoffard. As Stoffard looks up the inside there, going for overall position as the McLaren driver, and absolutely goes all in on the brakes, and Stoffard takes the place over as well. Mark De Vries right now is going to be wham bam, goodness me, what happened there, ma'am, as he makes his way out of turn number 5, and the Ferrari driver loses 2 places for the price of 5 quarters, and what a brilliant bit of opportunism there for Charlie Stoffard. Robin Milton, meanwhile, absolutely sublime going around the outside, but De Vries, to be fair, putting up a brilliant performance as well. All 3 tries there, really giving it their all. As behind them, and that's Grant Miller, and Grant Miller now has rolled Turf Cure right behind him. Well, I think Miller's had a bit of an incident on the previous lap because he was 3 seconds slow on that lap compared to his previous laps. I think there's been a bit of a mistake for the Ford Mustang driver because Turf Cure right now is right behind him, and the point being the MJK Sim Racing driver, he could really compound the damage here to Miller's championship. With 2 rounds to go after this one, Miller will not want to be finishing down in 7th place in Evo. I think he can tolerate 6th place, but going further back, that's going to be quite significant points damage, and as he heads in towards turn at number 12, Miller right now will need to try and keep this Ford Mustang ahead as much as he can, but Turf Cure, I think he's got other ideas because the pace of this Porsche is starting to come alive in the 20, but I have to see what happens between them. He's not close enough there, coming out of 13 to consider it down to Le Mans corner, and will be in that far back. He'll need to get within 2 tenths down the back stretch if he wants to feel comfortable on the Allman Straight about looking for the move into sunset, because we know the Porsche is strong around here, particularly on these more aggressive braking zones, and Vincent Loader trying to make his way back up the running order. He's in 8th place overall, 7th place in Premier Class. He comes down into the braking zone here for turn number 3, and as he does so, he's got Robin Aston right behind him for company. James Bostock is 2 seconds behind, having swapped place with Robin Aston earlier on in this stint. Well, Aston now already been released to be a bit rampant with the drivers in front, and Loader looking behind him now more and more as we look back from the rear. Well, the Porsche 992, the 133, and as he roars his way down towards turn number 7, Aston takes a peek to the inside. I think that's more to try and bleed off a little bit of speed into the braking zone. I know he's too far back to go for the move, but also to start making the Loader think, okay, well, is there going to be a move? Is there not going to be a move? It's all the mind games here, but these drivers will be used to it, given the fact they played plenty of mind games on each other in the past, and it doesn't just happen out of the circuit, it also happens down in the paddock before each and every race meet. I can tell you one thing, ladies and gentlemen, the Evolution Sim Racing community, by the friendliest communities, but also plenty of banter and mind games between the drivers there with regards to lap times and everything in between. But they roll the way on free at Loader right now. Will be putting those mind games to bed as he comes into at turn number 13 and out of it, and he'll just be trying to keep Robin Aston behind for the remainder with what is 3.5 minutes left on the clock plus that final lap in the distance. But as we do show you the oval stands on the left hand side, and that's what will stay up there for the remainder of the race distance. As they're coming down in towards Le Mans corner, through 15 and 16 they go. But this is the closest battle inside the top 10. The battles at the very front of the field, they have really spread out, and at this point, that is your top 3 all in the single camera shot, and then you do have the remainder, the top 4 being brought in with Nick Stubb and Ricard Luiz Pereira ever since the end of the pit stop window. Well, his second stint right now has been incredibly strong. Starsmont is starting to close, and has brought the gap down to 3.5 seconds, but Starsmont right now needs a bit more pace out there in order to be able to try and bring that gap down and go for a move on what will be the final lap, because they'll have this lap plus one more, and Starsmore right now not close enough. However, matching Starsmore's pace, but not really able to get any closer. 2.5 seconds is their gap, and Nick Stubb in 4th place. Well, he's fallen away a little bit from the top 3 over the previous couple of laps. He run wide there out of turn number 5, only moments to go. Well, it keeps the point in the right line, and that was after his slight error coming through turn 3 when he's battling with Howarth. That saw him lose the position. But this top 4 right now, they're all matching each other very evenly, so it really does come down to who makes a mistake here to lose a position, and sometimes that's the big battle there. It really is the battle of the minds between these drivers. They're not fighting each other on circuit in terms of exchanging what is paint and side by side on the tarmac. Instead, they're all fighting to try and put more pressure on the driver in front of them to make the error. But in terms of putting that pressure on the rival, they're also putting pressure on themselves to go faster and faster and maintain that pace, and that's where all the errors can come at any circuit, but none more so than Sebring. in the Evo class for Steve Rubino, well, he's leading still in 5th place overall. And what a drive this is from the Hobo Racing driver. I can imagine Daniel Rubino and also Anne Rubino, both in the YouTube chat there, cheering on the fellow member of the family in the 27 Mustang. I wouldn't say the family relation there because I don't know, unfortunately, but I'm sure Daniel and Anne might be able to tell me why it's all playing out. And these drivers absolutely, well, they're all pushing it, but Steve Rubino really has been the star of today, no doubt about it, in the Evo class and overall, because he's just been in a world of his own here at Sebring. Second place at the moment is Andre Montine in the ZX Systems, was accurate and another solid performance, having started there and will up into 11th overall, and he'll be happy with this because this will put him a little bit close to Grant Miller in the championship and the fight for second, and Owen Seward in third. Well, ever since the opening 10 minutes of the race, he's really been a bit of a lonely third place Evo driver, but he's been enjoying himself out there, no doubt about it. But as we then come back to the front of the field, well, the final lap has started then. It's going to be lap number 30. They make the way on 2. Ricard Luiz Pereira leads the field on the round, fastest lap of this stint, and now a 59.927 is set by James Howarth. So he is up in the pace. He tries to chase down Krista Stalsma, but even Howarth, I think, has left this too late in the days. 1.5 seconds going on to this lap is the delta, but 1.5 seconds is a big gap that he needs to close down. From them, Howarth fighting still for Christian Malaskov as he battles with Pete Piver for 13th place. Overall, looking up the inside there on the LS Racing B drive is the Verona Academy Porsche 992, and coming through the right hand, that's going to be a place made there for Malaskov, but Piver now will try and come back at him down the start finish straight as we look down over the front of the Brazilian's 111, and as he looks from left to right here, will he think about the move? Will he try and go for it into the opening corner? He's a bit far back if he is going to think about it, albeit that's not deterred some drivers in the past, having run the way through the left hand, and will Piver in the end trying to stay in it, but a lot of understeer there as he came through the corner. I think the front right tyre in this McLaren may be starting to lick its wounds, and therefore he has not got the speed to try and stay that close to Porsche anymore with the amount of downforce that's needed to carry all that momentum. And I think Piver, well, as Malaskov runs a little bit wide out of turn number 5, I think both of these drivers right now, both in cars that have seen better days in terms of the pace available to them, and just trying to get it to the finish line. But Charlie Stoffard, well, he's all over the back of Wesley Van Rens. He's come back at Van Rens in the closing stage onto this final lap. They know it's the last lap, and Van Rens right now will be trying to keep him behind for one more turn of the circuit. The Team KXR driver will be keen to try and put one over the RLH driver, the Racing League Hub driver, but we'll keep an eye on this where we can as Stoffard gets it close. But is he going to look for the move here into his turn number 7? Or we'll stay with us and then come back to our race leader. Well, here they come down. Stoffard looking to the inside. Van Rens sees it coming. Stoffard goes all in on the brakes and 4th place in Evo. Does he get it stopped in time? And the answer is yes, he does. It's a change of position. It's important, but right now we've got to come to the most important thing on the circuit, because as the checker flag starts to wave, well, he's won every feature race up to this point this season, and he's going to make it all the feature race of the season, because Ricard Luiz Pereira takes victory here in the Premier class and overall by 4.5 seconds over Crystal Starsmore, your runner-up today. And from the Simcast Racing UK driver is DXT Motorsports James Howarth, who completes the top 3. Nick Stubb finishes 4th, and then we've got a bit of time before this man comes on through, and an Evo win to be absolutely admired. Steve Rubino, take a bow, good sir, because what a race to take Evo victory for Hobo Racing. And Mathew Croft will take 6th there behind him. Now it'll be John LeBrook in 7th ahead of Vincent Loader. Will it be Loader? Will it be Aston? It's going to be Vincent Loader by 200ths at the line, who holds on to 8th. James Foster will come home to complete the overall top 10 ahead of Andrew Montaigne, who finishes your runner-up in Evo, 11th overall. Sander Tabbers with his best result of the season, 12th place there in the Corvette C8R Z06. What a drive from him. Christian Malaskov will hold off Pete Piver to the line there for 13th, and then we'll have Scott Koshich complete your top 15 overall. And it's a further 6.5 seconds to this man, Owen Seward, who makes his way on through the final corner, and Seward in the end taking the 3rd place spot there in Evo. What a drive from him. Ross Norsbury 17th ahead of Robin Milton, and it'll be Charlie Stoffard who just manages to finish ahead of Wesley Van Rens. In fact, Van Rens has fallen all the way down the order. What's happened to Van Rens right at the end? Well, something's happened, because Stoffard made the move on him, and Mark De Vries come through. Grant Miller's come through as well. Has Van Rens run out of fuel? Yes, he has. He's limping to the line, and Miller finished ahead of Van Rens. That's going to flip things in the Evo Championship. That is a late turn of events. I think Van Rens just underfueling slightly, just ahead of Roald Turfcura for his 6th place in the Evo class. Turfcura 7th in class. Craig Tillerson will then come through for 24th overall ahead of Stuart Rice, and all the rest of the field still to make the way to the line. Sean Clark also comes around here, and as he does so, well, he's going to be finishing 27th. Not the race he necessarily wanted in terms of the finishing position, but he had some great battling there for 9th place in the Evo class, with Premier and Evo drivers around him alike. We'll then have James Pallett cross the line just behind him in the all-red Ferrari, and it will be James Fraser there in 29th place, ahead of Daniel Poyle, who completes your top 30, and we'll have Eduardo Andino just behind him 31st, ahead of Matthew Hunter. And that will complete your finishing order on the lead lap, ladies and gentlemen. But what a race from start to finish, no doubt about it. And was Crystal Starswell makes his way on down the back straight here. A run-up position for Starswell in the Ferrari 296. For Ricard Luiz Pereira, well, what can you do to stop Luiz Pereira for taking victory. I don't think anybody's got an answer, at least in these feature races and the sprints they have. But in the feature races, Luiz Pereira, every time for Vulcan Motorsport Silver, finds some magic. But credit's where it's due to the Simcast Racing UK team driver. He may have been leading the first stint and in the end taking second, but still an absolutely brilliant drive to that runner-up spot, and he will be proud of that. As James Howarth in the pit lane, third place, returns to the podium. And I can imagine it's going to be a very happy DXT Motorsports driver when he gets out that Ford Mustang, and one we'd love to talk to a little bit later if we can. More with that, ladies and gentlemen, as all drivers make their way into the pits. Let's take a look at those race results, subject to any steward's inquiries. And here they are, as they do come up on screen. And well, as we can see, after 60 minutes of brilliant racing in round number 8 of Season 8 of the Evolution Sim Racing GT3 Championship, as brought to you on iRacing and powered by Trophy AI, particularly focused here today on Split B, Ricard Luiz Pereira taking victory and making all the feature race wins his over the course of this season, premier and overall for Vulcan Motorsport Silver by 4.5 seconds over Simcast Racing UK's Krista Starsmore. James Howarth completed the top 3 there, overall in the Premier Class for DXT Motorsports, 3 different manufacturers on the podium and 3 very unique drivers there, and some brilliant battling between them all the way through. But it all came down to strategy in the end, when Nick Stubb 4th place there for Vulcan Fasters by Glass Tech Racing, and 6 seconds between himself and the rest of the field. I think fuel running a little bit dry towards the end. It was then Steve Rubino, a further 8 seconds back, who took 5th over on the road. But the most important thing for him, it was Evo victory there with an absolutely incredible drive and the highest finisher position we have seen from an Evo driver this season, if my memory's correct. From him, Mathew Croft 6th place at Z-Axis Sim Sports, a result today which will mean he'll fall behind Krista Starsmore in the overall Premier Championship, and Ricard Luiz Pereira right now will seem to pull away a little bit more, and really it will be the question of who will be the run-up between Croft and Starsmore, unless there's a late turn of events over the final 2 rounds. But then again, you can't predict anything, but that's the way the math seems to suggest. From the Z-Axis Sim Sports driver, John Ludbrook was 7th for Kame GP2 Porsche, in a brilliant battle between them until Ludbrook had to back off towards the end. Vincent Loader was 8th for Sim Racing Team Lowlands, just ahead of Robin Aston in the end by no more than 17 thousandths of a second, with the Suma GP2 drive just missed out on 8th, but still holding on to 9th ahead of Kame GP2 Porsche's James Bostock, who completed your overall top 10. Best the rest in length was Andre Montine for Z-Axis Sim Sports, a runner-up in the Evo class and an absolutely solid drive there, and enjoying some great battles with his Premier peers. And then we did see a top 15 round up by Sander Tabbers, Christian Malaskov, Pete Piver and Scott Kostridge. 16th place overall was your 3rd place finish in the Evo class. Owen Seward, a great drive from the DXT Motorsports driver there. DXT Motorsports getting drivers on podiums in both our classes, and they'll be absolutely pleased with that. And looking further on down the order, we'll come to our class finisher position shortly. As we can see, all the way down to 31st is Eduardo Andino. All 31 drivers, they're finishing on the lead lap or thereabouts. A lap down for Matthew Hunter for Simcast Racing UK. And we also did see a lap down for Jan Nagy and Alex Boniface. 6 laps down with a retirement and non-classified finish as a result for Dean Sheesby, I believe for Moonshiners Racing Club. And official retirees for Adam Baker, Denny Ploger, Mark Wesley and Peter Duke. With Peter Duke having that retirement on the open lap after being turned backwards into the barrier coming through turn number 3 with that contact between himself and I believe Ricard Luiz Pereira, but I think the stewards may take a look at that one if deemed appropriate. But still staying in the here and now and the present, at least on circuit, look into the Premier results then, and as we look all the way back up through the pile of drivers, Ricard Luiz Pereira, your winner for Vulcan Motorsport Silver by 4.5 seconds there of Simcast Racing UK's Crystal Stars. Well, the opening stint was all about fuel saving in 3rd place, and with a very short pit stop compared to his rivals, he was able to leap into lead and drill in the laps that gave him the breathing room to come home to another victory. Krista Starsmore in 2nd there for Simcast Racing UK, in a world of his own in qualifying to a small degree, but also leading the way on the opening stint. A little bit helped by Steve Rubino making himself an absolute wide Mustang in the hunt for 2nd place in the early stages. Overall that was, but in the end, all the drivers starting to make their way through, and Starsmore, well, he had to settle for 2nd after a longer pit stop. DXT Motorsports' James Howarth, 3rd there with the longest pit stop of the top 4, but he had all the fuel in the car to force his way through. And in the battle with Nick Stubb, it was Stubb who wilted under the pressure and had to drop and settle for 4th for Vulcan Fasters by Glass Tech Racing. Matthew Croft was 5th for Z-Axis Sim Sports in a battle between himself and John Ludbrook over the race distance, but gradually pulled away ahead of the Kame GP2 Porsche driver. And then it was Vincent Loader in 7th for Sim Racing Team Lowlands, who at one point fighting for 5th place, but a small error cost him 2 places, and after that he never really recovered from it, and I wonder whether the tyres on that Porsche in the end needed quite a bit of nursing. In 8th place, it was Robin Aston for Suma GP2, ahead of James Bostock, and then we did see behind the Kame GP2 Porsche driver, 10th place for Sander Tabbers for Sim Racing Team Lowlands, and what a result there for the Corvette driver, one of his best of the season, fighting all the way from the start, and he fought hard to finish in the top 10. Unfortunate not to hit the top 10, meanwhile, in 11th place, best of the rest of the Premier drivers, Christian Malaskov for Rhino Academy, but still, we absolutely love to see him fighting from start to finish, and that is why he's one of the fan favourite of the Romanian drivers there on the grid, and what a drive from him, the 107. Pete Piver was the man he battled with all the way to the line, and Ian Piver just missing out by a 10th at the finish line, taking 12th for LS Racing B, Hidakame GP2 Porsche Scott Kostrich, and Ross Norsworthy completing the top 14. Rowan Milton was 15th for Phoenix Racing, a bit of a quiet race for him today after he went backwards on the opening stint, and we saw behind him Mark De Vries, Craig Tillerson, Stuart Rice, and James Pallett. Those who finished on the lead lap, 6 laps down as classified Dean Sheesby for Moonshiners Racing Club, and we also did have the unfortunate retirees there for Adam Baker, Denny Ploger, and last but not least, of course, Peter Duke there for DDK Racing Team. But then coming on to the Evo class, well, we do see here a bit of a different story and complexion with Steve Rubino taking an absolutely dominant victory in Evo for Hobo Racing by 20 seconds almost over ZX System Sports' Andre Montine, who in his own right drove his way to a brilliant second place finish, and Owen Stewart in the end in a calm, cool and collected drive took third place there by just being cool and consistent. A further 11 seconds back for him was Charlie Stoffard, who made that move for fourth place in the final lap, and the Team KXR driver getting the job done there. Holding off Grant Miller in the charge, the Phoenix race driver I think would have felt as though it was all falling apart until Vezi Renz ran low on fuel in the final lap and had to drop to 6th place for Racing League Hubs. That's going to keep it even tighter at the top of the Evo Class Championship. 7th place was rolled at Turf Cure, who'll be gutted today. He had the pace to finish inside the top 5, but the MJK Sim Racing driver, after a challenging qualifying session, couldn't find his way up through the field. Rob Gregg took 8th for Moonshiners Racing Club ahead of Sean Clark for DXT Motorsports, and we saw James Fraser complete the Evo top 10 for Moonshiners Racing Club. 11th was Daniel Paul for Flatline Racing at best of the rest ahead of Eduardo Andina for LS Racing B, and finishing a lap down, we saw Matthew Hunter on his return to the grid, Jan Nagy and Alex Boniface, and then retiring from the race early on after 5 laps completed, Mark Wesley, the only non-finisher in Evo for LS Racing B. Well, that concludes a rundown of the results, ladies and gentlemen, but it doesn't quite conclude our broadcast for today because, of course, whilst we may have completed all the racing here at the Sebring International Raceway, and we do bring a close all of our feature race rounds for the season, we still got our post-round interviews with our selected drivers to conduct, and we'll be back for those in approximately 9 to 10 minutes' time. So don't go anywhere. You won't want to miss them, ladies and gentlemen, and we will see you very shortly.
Of the green flag, and there we go. Tristan immediately getting the jump on his teammate Luke Lucchese, and he's going to have to go the long way around the outside. It's not done yet because Luke will have that favoured inside line going into turn 1 side by side. Has had a good start. He's up 2 places around the outside of Luke Lucchese, 3 wide there. The blue Acura on the inside. Hayden Phoenix Miller has gone from 4th to 1st in the matter of 1 braking zone there, and he will carry these drivers now down in toward turn 4. Great start there for the debutant who had strong qualifying pace, and now he might be up with an opportunity of making that stick if he can get the clean air in the next, and Plurg could have a good run here. Let's ride on board. How does the Noblica defend going into the chicane? Is Plurg going to do that tactic where you just stay there right until the last Noblica moves over to the entry into the chicane? Good driving. That's a wobble by Tristan, and he's off the road. He's going to lose the position. Is he going to stick up the inside? No. And is Justin Eloff going to fancy his chances? No, he stays.
Watkins Glen, and to have only 9 minutes before we reset and go again gives, I think, the drivers a bit of a moment to pause for thought, because how are you going to manage this, especially if you're 3 wide down the main straight? Humphrey, Leskinen, Katrali all don't get out Raj Harper either. 2 by 2 into the opening corner. Outside line taken for Humphrey. He's lost a little bit of time on the exit though, as it looks like it's a better run for Kalle Leskinen, the leader now in that pro class, as they run their way up the hill through 2 and 3. It looks like Raz Harper's got the best run, and now we could see both elite drivers come through on both pro drivers. They'll have to get it done on the outside of the bus stop, and that is going to be more than difficult to do. Who's going to get the slipstream? That could be crucial. One hour will be on the clock as the pace car is about to roll back in. GT3, so many of them about to get racing. GT4 just in behind as well. A brand new season is about to get going here at the Saxon Ring. It's ESR's GT European Championship, and Anton Kalo will lead us to green for the opening time this season. Jason Baxter and Jenny Tehar just in behind as the lights are on. The green flag flies, and there's a couple of drivers pulling out immediately of the pack. 3 wide, nearly 4 wide into the opening turn, with Denzel Clarkson trying to find an inside line. Jenny Tehar as well.
More, he's got Craig Hewlett in P11. just coming down the pit lane now with Henry Garcia, so this is going to end up being quite a tight battle. If they're going to also have Pedro to deal with, he would just be coming out in front of them. Yeah, he's a little bit further down the road, so these two are going side by side through a very, very tricky section. Looks like Craig's got the better of it done for the moment.
Seconds in the pit strategy, whether it's a 20-minute overcut, 20-minute undercut, we'll have to wait and see. Meanwhile, Jenny Tejada and Jason Baxter are fighting it out for the lead of the overall race. Baxter trying to make his way through. It'll have to be an outside line into turn 2 where a GT4 sits on the racing line. That's the number 14 that they have to negotiate their way around. But as they run through turns 2 and through turn 3, they don't have to now worry about that GT4 any longer and can continue working their way down a long way, and it can help you build in things like GT3, maybe some prototype cars as well. But yeah, it's so impressive to see him doing so well at the front of the field. Joe Glass getting himself, his teammate I should mention, as I said. Oh, still tries into that. That's a send from Dave Van Dam very late on the brakes into turn 1, but he's got it stopped in the apex. That's an incredible move. Very, very surprising for Joe Glass to find a car on his inside there, but effective for Dave Van Dam, and he has caught Joe Glass napping.
Of the green flag, and there we go. Tristan immediately getting the jump on his teammate Luke Lucchese, and he's going to have to go the long way around the outside. It's not done yet because Luke will have that favoured inside line going into turn 1 side by side. Has had a good start. He's up 2 places around the outside of Luke Lucchese, 3 wide there. The blue Acura on the inside. Hayden Phoenix Miller has gone from 4th to 1st in the matter of 1 braking zone there, and he will carry these drivers now down in toward turn 4. Great start there for the debutant who had strong qualifying pace, and now he might be up with an opportunity of making that stick if he can get the clean air in the next, and Plurg could have a good run here. Let's ride on board. How does the Obliga defend going into the chicane? Is Plurg going to do that tactic where you just stay there right until the last Obliga moves over to the entry into the chicane? Good driving. That's a wobble by Tristan, and he's off the road. He's going to lose the position. Is he going to stick up the inside? No. And is Justin Eloff going to fancy his chances? No, he stays.
Watkins Glen, and to have only 9 minutes before we reset and go again gives, I think, the drivers a bit of a moment to pause for thought, because how are you going to manage this, especially if you're 3 wide down the main straight? Humphrey, Leskinen, Kachali all don't get out Raj Harper either. 2 by 2 into the opening corner. Outside line taken for Humphrey. He's also a little bit of time on the exit though, as it looks like it's a better run for Kali Leskinen, the leader now in that pro class, as they run their way up the hill through 2 and 3. It looks like Raz Harper's got the best run, and now we could see both elite drivers come through on both pro drivers. So they'll have to get it done on the outside of the bus stop, and that is going to be more than difficult to do. Who's going to get the selection? That could be crucial. 1 hour will be on the clock as the pace car is about to roll back in. GT3, so many of them about to get racing. GT4 just in behind as well. A brand new season is about to get going here at the Sachsenring. It's ESR's GT European Championship, and Anton Kalo will lead us to green for the opening time this season. Jason Baxter and Jenny Tejada just in behind as the lights are on. The green flag flies, and there's a couple of drivers pulling out immediately of the pack. 3 wide, nearly 4 wide into the opening turn, with Denzel Clarkson trying to find an inside line. Jenny Tejada as well.
More, he's got Craig Hewlett in P11 just coming down the pit lane now with Henry Garcia, so this is going to end up being quite a tight battle. If they're going to also have Pedro to deal with, he would just be coming out in front of them. Yeah, he's a little bit further down the road, so these two are going side by side through a very, very tricky section. Looks like Craig's got the better of it done for the moment.
Seconds in the pit strategy, whether it's a 20-minute overcut, 20-minute undercut, we'll have to wait and see. Meanwhile, Jenny Dowher and Jason Baxter are fighting it out for the lead of the overall race. Baxter trying to make his way through. It'll have to be an outside line into turn 2 where a GT4 sits on the racing line. That's for number 14, but they have to negotiate their way around.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it is time for our post-round interviews. And this evening, well, we've been asking for some of our Evo class drivers to join us for an interview, and you're going to be hearing from two of them first and foremost this evening. Firstly, you're going to be hearing from DXT Motorsports' Owen Seward for a brilliant drive to third place in the Evo class. Calm, cool, collected and consistent. That's been his story. And then we'll come to the story of Phoenix Racing's Grant Miller, who I think is going to be a very topsy-turvy story of how it was all going wrong, and then Sonny in the closing laps, it all seems to go right, and he just finished inside the top 5 of Evo and importantly ahead of his main championship rival. Then we will be coming to our Premier Class driver James Howard for DXT Motorsports, and in his story of the fight for the win, albeit a third place finish, which is exactly where he started overall and in the Premier Class. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, joining me in the interview room now is none other, well in fact we try to bring him in, there he is, it's none other than Owen Seward. Good evening to you, Owen, and what a drive for yourself. Third place in class, coming all the way through from 6th on the starting grid. You must be absolutely pleased with that one.
Yeah, that was a really enjoyable one, to be honest. I've never been too good at Sebring, and sat there, just played it easy, and made it into third somehow. Not sure how really.
Well, we'll try and dissect the story and understand how you made it happen. But first, let's talk a little bit about qualifying. Qualifying saw you qualify 25th on the overall grid, 6th in the Evo class. We've seen some mixed qualifying performances from yourself this season. How would this one rate compared to how it's gone so far this season?
Terrible. I think my fastest lap was my first one. And from there it was just downhill, to be honest. I don't know what I don't know what happened. I mean, this season's been a bit hit and miss. Road America was good. I don't know what happened on that track, but I seem to be all right at it. And yeah, I mean, I don't know what happened tonight, to be honest. I had a bit of tunnel vision.
Well, perhaps a bit of tunnel vision in qualifying, and well, perhaps the sunset may have done it. Perhaps there's something in the atmosphere, but what wasn't in the atmosphere was what happened to the circuit in the early stages. We look back from the early race footage. And in the early stages, looked as though everything was happening around you. As we see some of the footage to see Craig Tillotson losing his front bumper there and some of your rivals behind. But you're able to steer clear of the danger on the opening couple of laps.
Yeah, I mean, I've been focusing on my safety overall in iRacing, to be honest. And yeah, it was a bit dicey. I was right up Grant Miller's backside for, 4 or 5 laps the whole opening. And he unfortunately had a bit of a spin. But yeah, no, managed to get through it and just pull away. It was nice, to be honest.
Now, we have heard from a number of drivers up and down the grid that this McLaren, if it's in the hands of Charlie Stoffard, for example, absolutely flies and goes charging for in the open laps. Whereas you seem to take a bit of a different approach in this McLaren, whether it's in the sprint or the feature race like today, which is you let it come up to its race pace. I mean, was that always the plan here today, to give it a chance to build up? Because it looks as though with yourself, you're able to get a lot out of this McLaren the longer the race goes on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in it for endurance racing, to be fair. The 2:30 minutes, I can't do as well. Once I get comfortable, I know what's on the track, understand who's on the track. I seem to be able to get some pace from a car. This McLaren is so tail happy. You've got to be so careful with it. But once you get used to it, it's all right.
Well, getting used to it definitely being a key part, and by feeling comfortable, you're able to extract the pace. And as we then saw as the open laps went on and we went deep into that opening stint, you started to fight your way up through the field as others battled, others pitted as well. Looks like you had a lot of pace on the Ford Mustang of Grant Miller, and you were catching the likes of Wesley Van Rens quite early on.
Yeah, I was a bit confused on why people were pitting so early. I think I noticed that and thought I'm going to stay out right to the very end and just use as little fuel as possible to get some time back, and it seems to pay off. I think I was net 4th, gained some time on P4, and then ended up in front somehow. But yeah, it's all right. This is one of my first interviews. I'm not very good at this.
Oh, you're doing absolutely fine. It's great to have you. And carrying on then, with regards to your strategy, did you have a particular time to pit in mind, or was it just go with the flow, go with the full fuel tanks? We saw some drivers try and push it all the way to limit, some going as deep as 38 minutes into the race. Whereas it yourself, you seem to put it right in the middle.
Yeah, I don't have a plan. I never really have a plan. To be honest, the first time I opened up this track for practice was 20 minutes before the race. So I rocked up and just tried my best. I didn't know, I always plan for 10 minutes, and if I last for longer, then it's good.
Well, that's absolutely fair. So no real plan other than coming when the time's right. But when you came into the pits from third place in the Evo class, rejoined the racing in what was effectively third place. Were there any worries at any point that Sonny you were going to see, say, Van Ren's ahead of you, alternatively Grant Miller, Sonny make a reappearance? Or did you think to yourself, you know what, this is all looking good for third place?
Yeah, no, I think about halfway through the race, I was pretty confident that's where I was going to end up. That P1 and P2, there was no chance I was getting those guys. But P4, I could see I was about the same time, if not a little bit quicker. So it was just keeping it consistent. I did pick up a few X's, but I know if I just kept it on the track, I'd be all right.
Well, definitely get the right approach to having. I'm loving the confidence with which you went into the second stint. And come the end of it, we saw you make a little bit more progress, taking 16th overall in the end. Was there a temptation to chase some of the premiers?
I had a few behind me. I think it was 18th at one point, but no, I try and stay out of their way as much as I can. Sometimes you've just got to do your own thing and see what happens. But to be honest, I don't really have a plan for any of this. I just rock up and have fun.
Well, the fun's what it's all about. And looking into the bigger pitch now with 2 rounds remaining, you came into this round 10th in the Drivers' Championship. This result's going to be huge. It's added as your second podium for this season, following up your win earlier on. Is it giving you belief now that perhaps you can chase down, not necessarily a late top 5, but perhaps 6th or 7th in the championship? Because it's very close in the hunt not to be in the top 5.
Yeah, I'm not here now for the rest of the season to well, I'm obviously going to do my best, but to get, I'm just here to practice for next season really now. I've just been away on holiday for 2 weeks and missed a couple and missed a race at the start of the season, so get some practice in with this car and get ready for season 9.
Well, I'm liking the approach there, thinking about the bigger picture and the long term. But coming back to the short term, next week we head to Imola for our penultimate round. How are you feeling for the fast-flying Italian circuit?
I've not thought about it. I'll open it up next week sometime. Give it a go. See what happens. I don't really have time to practice too much with work and that. So, yeah, I haven't thought about it.
Oh, that's absolutely fair. Some do, some don't, but you're taking this week by week and day by day, and that's an absolute valid approach to take, Owen. But just before we do let you go, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
No. I don't think so. Maybe DXT. They yeah, DXT. They get me through each day actually. So yeah, that's it.
Well, that's absolutely fair, Owen, and it's been a pleasure having you join me in the interview room. Well done again on a brilliant result today, a third place that's well and truly earned at the Sebring International Raceway. We look forward to you having even more fun out of the circuit at Imola in a week's time as you prepare for Season 9. But with that, enjoy the moment, enjoy the podium, and have a great rest of your evening.
Legend. Enjoy the rest of your evening too, mate. Thank you.
So hearing there, ladies and gentlemen, from a novice to interviews, but I think you did pretty well. I think you'd all agree with me there in the YouTube chat. Do let me know if you agree. Owen Seward, who had an absolutely fun race today, and not knowing where the pace was in qualifying, I do love the way he talks about it quite candidly. Well, my first lap was my best lap, and everything after that just seemed to go wrong. And, well, the DXT Motorsports McLaren driver putting together a lap that was good for 25th on the overall grid, 6th in qualifying. But as he went racing, as the pictures in the background have shown, he started to pick up the pace. And being honest there, and the fact that he enjoys the endurance races compared to the sprint races, not comfortable with the sprint, perhaps something he needs to work on for Season 9 in terms of getting more familiar and comfortable with the idea that sometimes you've got to get the car up to speed quickly, but in these longer races, able to keep the car alive, manage the tyres, and then gradually pick up the pace. And he was all over the back of Grant Miller for a good portion of the opening 10 to 15 minutes of the race, able to make the progress as some drivers decide to pit early, and in doing so, by gradually earning himself that clear air, pulling away from the cars behind, Well, when he came out the pits, he was confident he'd be in third place, and that's exactly where he'd be all the way to the end of the race. It'll be interesting because, of course, he's not set himself any targets for the remainder of the season other than to have fun and get himself ready for Season 9 in the Evo class. And Owen Sid right now will with what is a happy-go-lucky nature and just wanting to improve. And, well, a lovely move to be made into Sunset Bend there side by side with Miller, or attempting to. We imagine right now Sid will take his chances, and when doing so, well, he will be a threat to everyone up and down the Evo order, and that's what's going to make him an entertaining driver to watch, particularly next week at Imola. But now coming on to our second interview of the day, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the man who was trying to pass there. We're going to be speaking to Grant Miller very shortly and hearing the story of the championship contender in the Evo class, who really has had an up and down day today. And we're going to get all the story in that seesaw motion, no doubt about it, as he gets ready to join me from Phoenix Racing. And in fact, here he is, ladies and gentlemen. Let's hear from the Ford Mustang driver himself. Good evening to you, Grant. And I can imagine that tonight has really been one of those evenings where I think it was all feeling as though it was going wrong, and then suddenly the last couple of laps, it's still sort of gone wrong, perhaps not the way you wanted it to go, but at least your championship rivals had it go a bit worse compared to you. I mean, how's it been at Sebring?
It's been horrendous. I don't know how to get round the second last corner before the big back straight, so I lose all the pace. So I can't trim the car out. I need it all on wing. So qualifying was pretty decent for what I've been practicing on, within a 10th. At least I got good clean laps. I didn't get clean laps on the last race. And then I looked at my grid position and was like, oh, that's not good. I mean, Steve Rubino was a 15.97, which was like, right, well, that's way out of my league. That's 3/4 of a second faster than I've ever done. So, right, so if he's on that pace, I'll just need to do some damage limitation and see if I can just keep it on the track and go for points. And that's all I was hoping for, was just to try and keep it on the track and see if somebody else might spin out at sunset, or maybe going a bit too quick, because I know I wasn't going quick enough to spin out, that's for sure. Although I did get spun out, yes.
Well, indeed. There were a few spins, one for yourself as well. But I do love the way you're talking about it there in terms of just trying to avoid the danger and pick up some pieces. And well, from qualifying to the race, I mean, we always know this Mustang, if it's on a straight, it's going to be quick. In the corners, it may not be as quick, but at least you can make it wide. And I can imagine you had a lot of fun trying to make this thing absolutely obnoxiously wide, as we do see the footage of Wesley Van Rens going too wide with you and then the spin out. I mean, you definitely went defensive when you could.
Yeah, if there was a button to open the doors, I think I would try and map those buttons, because I didn't have any pace at all. And into the braking zone, I'm just trying to not run it wide. And I knew he was there, I just didn't know where he was. I've only got a single monitor, so I knew from the radar that he was down the right hand side somewhere. I couldn't see where. And I thought, right, okay, if I move it back towards the middle of the track, it'll be okay. But he was obviously there, and I think I must have came across the front of him, and I've clipped his front left, and that spun me out. But then it was just head down, and right, okay, it was a little bit damaged, not too bad. So I selected the fast repair for when I came into the pit, but it didn't handle too bad. And then I was starting to catch them back up, and I thought, well, that's okay. We'll keep this going. There's maybe no real damage, and we'll see what happens come the pit stops. And then I just started closing in on them. But no, I didn't have enough pace to be comfortable. I need to find another sort of half a second easily on that to be comfortable.
I see. Well, you may not have felt too comfortable on the pace day, feeling a little bit behind your rivals, but still, with the damage you picked up and then gradually picking your way back up through the field in the second stint, I can imagine going into the second stint, it must leave you in sort of two minds, because you're thinking at that point, okay, I've got a championship fight with Wesley Van Rens. He's ahead of me right now. I've got to try and find a way through. But also, the other part of you, it's almost if you've got a devil on one shoulder saying that, and then the angel on your shoulder saying, just get to the end of the race. There could be an opportunity. Anybody can mess it up. You shouldn't mess it up, however. What mindset were you in at that point? Was it sort of, we're just going to get to the checker flag, or were you worrying about the championship?
Well, I knew I didn't have the pace. I mean, Andrea was almost as quick as Steve. Wesley was, I think he was just a little bit behind, but there was like 5 cars ahead of me, and the way that I've got the overlay set up, he disappeared. Wesley disappeared when we were coming around the pit stops. he disappeared from the timing board on my screen. I'm like, has he crashed? Has he pitted? I didn't actually know where he was. I know where Steve was. I could see him on the grid, but I couldn't see where I was in relation to Wesley. And then when I came into the pits, I probably came into the pits 3 laps too early, but I knew there was a big gap. I could see the gap on the back straight. I thought, right, well, I should come out somewhere in that gap. Got a good pit stop. It did the fast repair. When it came out, I must have jumped 2 people. I didn't know who they were. I didn't see them. And then there's Wesley and Charlie Stothard right in front of me. I thought, right, well, that's it. It's game on now. And I could keep a hold of Charlie. Charlie was battling with one of the premiers. I was trying to message them to say, you know, he's not fighting for points. You can just let him go. But, you know, he's defending his position like he can. And I'm just trying to close in on them. And then I outbraked myself coming into turn 7, the hairpin. And I thought, well, that's that gone. But managed to close it back up. And then I looked at the fuel balance, and I think it was like 5 laps from the end. I only had 20 litres left. And this thing burns about 4 litres a lap. And I thought, right, I now need to start coming off the throttle a bit earlier. And I saw the last lap come out, and then I looked at the grid order, and Wesley was in front of me. And I thought, oh, how's that happened? Has he crashed? Has he spun out? And then I could see him slowing down some of the corners, and I thought, right, this is my only chance to actually try and jump him now is either into sunset or before the back straight. And as I've said, I can't get that thing to turn worth anything on the back straight, so it had to be sunset. And he slowed right down on the back straight, and I think he thought about closing the door, but I was bringing it into the inside, and I was looking at my fuel, and I think I crossed the line with about 0.4, 0.5 litres in the tank. So while Wesley, I think he ran out of fuel, or he got a slow down. No, it must have been fuel. He didn't get a slow down. It was just enough. And then it was like, well, some days you've just got to have lucky days. It certainly wasn't based on pace today. It was just pure luck, and luck of the pit stops and luck of the fuel, I'm afraid.
Well, there's always a bit of luck involved no matter what the result. And for yourself, what it does mean now, having just finished slightly ahead of Wesley Van Rens, you were 11 points apart going into tonight. You two are going to be even closer coming out of tonight. 2 rounds remain. We head to Imola next week. How are you feeling for the start of our Italian doubleheader?
Never driven it, don't own it. I think it's a wet, mixed race. Haven't got a clue what to do on it. So it's a week's worth of practice, and we'll find out.
Well, it's definitely going to be interesting, no doubt about it. Learning the circuit, and you're going to have the changeable conditions as well for that round. I mean, you're going to keep it interesting all the way through, Grant. I can tell you that, and we look forward to seeing what you can do at Imola. But just before we do let you go, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to this evening?
Well, just a shout out to Hayden, who was in Split A. It was his 16th birthday today. It didn't go well for his race. I think he crashed out on that one, but he's had a good day. He's got some new bits and pieces for his sim rig. So shout out to the birthday boy today. And then obviously we're lining up teammates for season 9 coming out. So shout out to these guys in Phoenix Racing pit just now. And we'll see what we can do for the next couple of races.
Well, Grant, we look forward to seeing what you can do in the next couple of races. We know how tight the championship fight between Wesley Van Rens and yourself is for Evo Glory, but we'll continue the story at Imola in a week's time, and best luck with the practice. But until then, well done the 5th place finish today, and we look forward to plenty more from yourself in a week's time.
Excellent. Cheers. Thanks very much. Excellent broadcast as usual, guys.
Thank you. So hearing there from Grant Miller, ladies and gentlemen, and well, talking about the fact there, today wasn't on the pace necessary. May have been 3rd place in qualifying, 20th place overall, but beyond that, well, it was really down to fortune to pull him out of what seemed to be a difficult spot. Early stage of the race, the pace wasn't there, and admitted himself in the end, fell down the order and then had to try and fight his way back up. But the problem was, the drivers around him just had the pace in order to stay one step ahead, so nothing was quite clicking together. However, by being in a situation whereby he couldn't perhaps drive as aggressively as some of his rivals, he was finding that despite the tap and spin and the contact between himself and Van Rens, their little tap, which I'm sure they'll talk about after the racing, well, the point being the fact he was able to catch back up, and in doing so and just being smart on the strategy, not doing anything too aggressive, he was able to find himself right in the back of the hunt at the top 5 of the Evo class. And when drivers started to fall by the wayside in the closing stages, that's when he was able to make up the places. But the ultimate fortunate intervention, of course, was the Van Rens run out of fuel on the final lap and having to crawl to the finish line, and Grant Miller able to take the place back. And I do believe as a result of this, it will now bring them to within 6 points, if not a point of each other, going into our penultimate round. And well, Grant Miller is going to have to learn the Imola circuit, given the fact he's going into it for changeable conditions as well. He doesn't make it easy, but then again, no championship crown is easy to take. And for Grant Miller, one step at a time, and the Phoenix Racing driver is continuing to push forward here as Season 8 really starts to move towards its ultimate crescendo. But now, ladies and gentlemen, coming to our final interview of the evening. You've heard from one former Mustang driver, and let's hear from another one, because we are now going to come to the man who really fought hard for victory today in the form of James Howarth, and hearing his story and what has been definitely a race where as much as he went forward, he also went a bit backwards, and in the end finished where he started, but had to work absolutely to the limit in order to make it happen. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, he joins me now in the interview room. James, I can imagine right now you're probably thinking to yourself, for every step you took forward today, you took a step backwards theoretically. Third place is where you started, third place is where you finished, but goodness me, you gave us an absolute spectacle in that Ford Mustang. How was Sebring for you?
Very, very good, and I really enjoyed it today. The pace of the top 3, 4 was probably I can't get my words out. It literally separated by a couple of tenths, and it really showed, because obviously at the start of the race my tyres are obviously needing to warm up a little bit quicker, and towards the middle and the end of the stint, that's when my lap time started to drop. And then obviously I had Ricardo for company for the first half of the stint. He let me past, and he was fuel saving, and obviously my cars are literally a brick wall in giving him clean air, and I had to pit early because obviously it's another thirsty car. And then after the pit I was 2 places down, so I had to knuckle down and try and get past Nick Stubb, which I did not the way I intended.
Oh, goodness me. Well, breaking it down a little bit more, talking a bit more about qualifying. I mean, third place in qualifying, it was close in the end. And I believe the top 3, yourself at the bottom of it, the 3 of you separated by less than a half a tenth. It's the closest qualifying session we've seen between our top 3 on the grid. And that's then excluding was our 4th place driver, who was less than 400ths behind yourself. I mean, you must be thinking to yourself at some point, surely I'm going to get this. I'm going to be so close, I've got to be on that front row.
Yeah, and I pushed so hard on my final lap, and I just couldn't find that extra 1/10. I just couldn't.
Well, you couldn't find the 10th, but you pushed and gave it everything. And over the race distance then, particularly that first stint, I mean, was there well, in fact, let me redial it. Did you have a plan in mind for the open lap? And afterwards, did another Ford Mustang in the hands of Steve Rubino completely throw that out the window? Because he came out of nowhere at the start of the race, and I think got ahead of everybody before you even knew, wait a minute, is that the Evo leader in second?
Yeah, literally, I was like, hang on a minute, why can I hear another screaming V8 next to me? And next thing you know, Steve's there and basically saying, hello, thanks for coming, see you all later. And we were all battling on the inside of turn 1, and then inside of turn 2, and obviously an unfortunate accident happened to Pete, and we all had to slow right down, and Steve Rubino's just like, thank you very much, I'll just take second.
Well, indeed, it was a surprise and a welcome one for us here in the quarantine booth, as we saw all the madness unfold. But like you say, unfortunate for Peter Duke to see him backwards in the wall. But focusing on yourself again, once you'd all cleared Steve Rubino and seen him drop a bit further down, from that point onwards, we saw yourself and Ricardo battling for a period of time. But it looked as though in the end, the Acura driver was just content to sit behind you. Did you have a suspicion at that point, okay, he's probably just using me to fuel save?
Yeah, at the very end of the back of my mind, I was like, he's just happy sitting in behind, letting me punch the biggest hole in the universe of clean air. But I was dragging him along because slowly over time I was catching Starsmore up. And as soon as I pitted, and then I had to add more fuel than anyone else. So I just took fresh tyres as well because it wouldn't affect me as much. It didn't affect my time coming out the pits. And my out lap just ruined it for me because I had to get the tyres back up to temperature.
Well, frustrating moment to get the tyres back up to temperature. So in the end, falling down to 4th place. And then the chase began on Nick Stubb. And it looked as though you were closing gradually. Then you get into battling distance. And we see him go around coming at turn number 3. Was there contact there, or was it of his own volition? Because if there was contact, the two of you were quite far apart.
I watched the replay back straight after the race, and I slowed it right down, and mid-corner, my rear end straightened up, and that made me touch him in the slightest, and it might have been netcode because we both got a 0x for it. So I think it's just one of them, because I didn't intentionally go out and just tap his rear, because that's not how I operate and how I like to drive. It's just one of them unfortunate accidents where my rear literally straightened up mid-corner, which wouldn't allow me to get that little bit more rotation to get round.
I see. Unfortunate there that the contact may have happened between the two of you, and I'm sure you both discussed it after the race, and like you say, no intention, but sometimes these things do happen. But from that point onwards, running third then, and was there still perhaps the want to hunt down Starsmore? Because we saw you closing on very gradually, particularly the last 3 laps. You managed to take out a huge chunk of time. But something tells me you may have also been in the mindset then, you know what, there's just not enough time on the road.
I was catching Starsmore up, and then unfortunately again, a back marker just didn't get out of the way before the hairpin. So I was flashing to like, just please move. But he let me through mid-corner, which threw me off a little bit, and I managed to get it down to 1.6 behind Starsmore, and then after the hairpin, it was like back to 2.5. So then I was like, right, let's try and build, let's try and get some quali laps in. And if I had just one more lap, I reckon I would have caught him up and been an interesting little battle. But again, it's another unfortunate incident between back markers, but stuff happens.
Oh, indeed it does, but that's the way the racing goes, unfortunately, in these longer races. But still, an absolutely heroic effort from yourself to finish third and fight your way all the way back up into that hunt for second. If only we had one more lap, but we didn't, so it's that classic what-if question. But one thing we can say for certainty today is, looks like you had a lot of fun out there, and with this result, it adds to what was your first podium at the start of the season, and with 2 rounds to go, both at Italian circuits, I can imagine you're eyeing up a few more podiums before all is said and done.
I'm not hoping for podiums because we have some, again, really quick drivers with Starsmore, Ricardo, Crofty, he's in there as well with Peter Duke. So it's one of them. I'm happy to probably finish in the top 10 around the next few rounds and just slowly climb that championship standings. But I was away for 2 rounds, so my fight for top 3 was out as soon as I managed to hit the Caribbean.
I see. Well, still a lovely holiday by the sounds of things. So does that mean attentions are perhaps turning then just as much, not just to the final 2 rounds of the season, but also to season 9?
It is. I think I'm just going to stick with the Stang again because I'm just so confident with it. But with the new GT3 module coming into play in the next season of iRacing, it's going to be a brand new learning curve. See what the strengths are, find out the weaknesses, and try and tweak a setup that suits, like, minimizing the difference between the strengths and the weaknesses. But we'll soon see.
Well, indeed, we will. We look forward to what's to come from yourself over the remaining 2 rounds in the ending of what is Season 8 of the Championship and heading into Season 9. But of course, Imola's next up. And before we do let you go, James, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
again, yourself for an amazing stream. The DXT lot, minus Owen because he obviously didn't shout out anyone. And obviously my girlfriend Laura for the support in chat as well as my own stream. So,
well, James, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you join me in the interview room this evening. Well done on a brilliant drive to third place, a deserved podium. Indeed, we would have loved to see you perhaps have a nip at Starswell right at the end, but time ran out. But one thing we can definitely say is we never run out of enjoyment at seeing you hustle the Mustang round. We hope for plenty more at Imola in a week's time. But until then, enjoy the podium, have a great evening ahead, and we'll see you in a week's time.
see you later, mate. Good night.
So hearing there, ladies and gentlemen, from our final interview of the evening, James Howarth. And I think part of him there, a little bit gutted not to be fighting for second place, right, and wanting that extra lap. But the flip side of the coin there, in the fact that he gave it everything today, and the DXT Motorsports driver absolutely enjoying every single lap. Some outside circumstances definitely intervening. The intervention of a back marker or two there, preventing him from being able to close down Christopher Sarsmore on that closing stint. But also some of the more positive aspects, pushing absolutely hard in the Ford Mustang over the course of his qualifying laps. And in the end, it's having to settle for third, which in many a respect, I think he would have been over the moon with that third place in the qualifying. But you can hear it in his voice there, the slight frustration in his voice, and the fact that what did he have to do to get pole position? He absolutely tossed the car at the circuit, but that's how close qualifying was. And talking and coming to his latter point, he's not setting up his hopes for podiums because he knows how many drivers are so strong in this Premier class. We really do have one of the best Premier driver sets that we have seen over recent seasons. That's not to say previous seasons haven't been great, but when you do have a top three separated by half a tenth in qualifying, you know you're on St. Magical. But of course, when you are the 154 driver of James Howarth, when you start third in that trio, it's just a little bit underwhelming compared to what you think you can do. But over the race distance, drove a solid race, knew that his rivals were fuel saving compared to him and he'd have to take on the extra fuel, so went all in on the tyres. Took him a bit longer to get the tyres up to temperature, but got them there and just ran out of time to hunt down second. But still a great result, and now his mind in two places, focusing on the final two rounds at Imola and Monza, but also preparing for Season 9. He'll be back in the Mustang there, he says. He thinks he will because he does enjoy the car. It enables him to get the best out of it. But whilst he may want to get the best out in Season 9, I'm sure we're still yet to see the ultimate from James Howarth over the course of this season. And something tells me I think he's got one more podium in him, if not a race win in the final two rounds. I'm not going to put bets on it, but something tells me he may just be able to do it for DXT Motorsports. Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, that brings our interviews to a close. And we've heard then from our Premier driver, most recently from DXT Motorsports, to James Howarth in the 154. But before that, we heard from a pair of Evo drivers. And it's lovely to hear from Evo drivers. And Owen Stewart there for DXT Motorsports in the Evo class. Firstly, taking that third place on the Evo podium. And also Grant Miller for Phoenix Race and taking that fifth place in the end in an absolute muddle of a race day for the second place man in the Evo Championship. But things turned up sunny in the end. Thank you to all three of them for their time this evening and for their post-round interviews, and we look forward to plenty more from them at Imola in a week's time. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show, and perhaps you're there sat wanting to know more about Evolution Sim Racing, or perhaps even want to be on the grid for a future season or one of our ongoing seasons of racing, and it doesn't have to just be GT3, because we're not just GT3 here at Evolution Sim Racing. Well, we'd like to point out that we do have, of course, multiple series ongoing currently. We have our GT3 Championship powered by Trophy AI, which happens every Thursday evening as we gradually come to a close of Season 8, but Season 9 is already on the cards and sign-ups are already open. Alternatively, if you do want to do something on the weekends, we do have two series running in parallel to each other on alternating weekends. We, of course, have the European GT Championship. That's on one Sunday evening every 2 weeks. And on the alternating evening, we do have the Danny Lee Porsche Cup, brought to you in collaboration by Danny Lee and GT Omega. And that's on Sunday evenings as well, as dedicated to the Porsche 992 GT3 Cup machine, not the GT3 spec car, but the one that's even more challenging to drive with the anti-lock braking system switched off and no traction control as well. But if you don't want to be on the grid for any of those, perhaps you're looking for something a bit more casual, you just want to practice with us and get to know all the drivers, we can recommend you join our official practice league, which does run on Tuesdays and Saturdays, Tuesday evenings and Saturday afternoons at 4 o'clock. All that's available, and we've got plenty more planned for this year. There's never been a better time to be on the grid at Evolution Sim Racing. And to find out even more information and be on the grid with us, or just be in part of the community, where it's all part of the Evolution Sim Racing Discord, invite link available on screen there, or you can use the QR code. We'd also at this moment say a big thank you to our sponsors, and indeed our series sponsors of Trophy AI, of which the GT3 Championship is powered by, the Virtual Racing School, that's VRS, Carme, Modern Technology, GP2 Group, and also we'd like to give a big shout out to Motorsport UK's esports division, as they have recognised us as a recommended community in the sim racing world. And a big thank you to Motorsport UK as we continue our working relationship with them. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, the work is not yet done for our drivers because 2 rounds remain. And next time, well, we head to Italy for the start of our doubleheader to see the season out. And it will be round number 9 on the Thursday, the 29th of May, 2025. That our drivers will take on the Imola circuit on 9 in fall as the Autodromo International Enzo Edino Ferrari. And on Italian soil, could we see Ferraris run high? Because in the Premier class, Krista Starsmore right now and Mathew Croft will both need to find some magic if they want to bring down what seems to be a gradual run and one hand on the championship crown for Ricard Luiz Pereira after his victory today, taking victories in every feature race of the season so far. And meanwhile, in the Evo class, it is going to be practically neck and neck now between Wesley Van Rens and Grant Miller, but Andre Montine and a number of other Evo drivers continue to find their form. It's anybody's guess out of the pair who could be leading going into the season finale. Indeed, if any of the other drivers can suddenly make a last-minute spring into the championship fight. Well, for all that and more, to see how the story continues in round number 9, you've got to tune in the week's time. But until then, we've been Evolution Sim Racing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, remember to stay on track. Good night.
For the upcoming right-hander, brake 30 meters later and ease off the pressure.
Are you spending a lot of time looking for setups and struggling for faster lap times? Are you tired of searching online for answers? Would you like to get setups, analysis and tutorials from some of the best sim racers in the world like Ralph Alla, Mitchell de Jong, Martin Krunker, Josh Rogers and many more? If so, virtualracingschool.com is the answer you've been looking for. VRS data packs provide hot laps from our professional coaches for you to analyse and replicate. They provide tutorials that walk you through the fastest laps and what the pros did to achieve the best times. And they provide the setups you need to ensure your car is competitive in both oval and road racing. If you're ready to get faster and reach more podiums sooner than later, just go to virtualracingschool.com and sign up for a free account today.